Chapter 1325. This magic tool was pitch black and very similar to the usual spear tip. However, there was a clear crack at the back of the spear tip, as if it was split from the head of a spear. The reason why Xiao Hua's gaze fell on this spear tip was purely because he couldn't see the shape of other magic tools, but this spear tip looked somewhat familiar. When the dark skinny old man saw Xiao Hua's gaze fall on the spear tip, he immediately stretched out his hand and grabbed the spear tip. His hand paused for a moment, and a strange expression appeared on his face. Then he raised his arm and handed the spear tip to Xiao Hua and said, "Little kid, did you think of this?" Xiao Hua lowered his head and looked at the spear tip in front of him. It was only shining with a dark light, and there was nothing special about it. If the old man didn't say that it was a magic tool, he wouldn't have been able to see it. Xiao Hua swept a glance at the spear tip. He was somewhat unwilling, and wanted to look at other places. "Enough, little guy, take this thing. You want to trade this old man's magic tool with your little things. I don't know if you have accumulated good karma in your previous life, but you shouldn't be discontent." The old man coldly threw the spear point toward Xiao Hua's hand. Then, with a wave of his hand, all the magic tools in the booth were collected by him. His movements were very fast, and after a flash, all the items were collected by him. Xiao Hua was in a hurry to catch the spear point, so he didn't pay attention to where the old man collected the magic tools. Xiao Hua's hand just touched the spear tip when a cold feeling passed from the spear tip to his hand, and then up his arm. Almost at the same time, his heart also felt cold. What's going on?" Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed in his heart. However, just as this astonished thought arose in his mind, the weight of the spear tip suddenly dropped down, causing Xiao Hua's hand to loosen. The heavy spear tip actually caused Xiao Hua to be caught off guard, causing him to drop it to the ground. Ha ha ha, the dark skinny old man saw this and laughed loudly. His figure flashed across the sky and flew away at a low altitude. Then a low voice sounded in Xiao Hua's ear. "Little kid, this old man is Mingsui Mountain Shi Wuming. You can borrow this name once. This old man acknowledges it." Shi Wuming of Mingsui Mountain? Xiao Hua was stunned. He had never heard of this name before. When he raised his head to look again, Shi Wuming was nowhere to be seen. There were still a few stall owners at the side. They lowered their heads and cultivated with their eyes closed. No one paid any attention to him. "I'm so unlucky." Xiao Hua sighed and squatted down. He reached out his hand to pick up the spear tip that had fallen to the ground. After all, he had exchanged everything for this spear tip. Even if it was trash, he still had to keep it. The spear tip is so heavy? Xiao Hua squatted down and saw clearly that the ground of EG was originally paved with huge bluestone. When the spear tip fell to the ground, it actually smashed the entire bluestone. Of course, the ground of EG had a restriction array. The bluestone on the ground was not really smashed, but the restriction array on the bluestone was broken. When Xiao Hua squatted down, the cracked restriction array had already begun to gradually recover. "Are you kidding me?" Xiao Hua stared dumbfoundedly at the broken restriction array on the ground. How familiar was this situation to him? Wasn't this the result of him using force to break the restriction array? All of a sudden, Xiao Hua's eyes brimmed with fervor. He had a new idea. The sorrow of having been robbed clean of everything had long since been tossed to the highest heavens. His heart was once again filled with joy, disbelief, and shock. Xiao Hua did not immediately pick up the spear tip. Instead, he first maintained his squatting position and looked around. The surrounding situation was the same as before. No one was interested in this unlucky guy. Then, Xiao Hua reached out and grabbed the back half of the spear tip. With a slight force, the spear tip was held in Xiao Hua's hand. No one could see the weight of the spear tip at this time. Then, Xiao Hua clapped his hand without hesitation and threw the spear tip into the storage bag. But just as the spear tip entered, Xiao Hua suddenly felt the storage bag sink. It was very different from when he put things in before. He immediately opened it again and saw that the tip of the spear tip had sunk into the storage bag. He could not see it clearly. This Xiao Hua frowned. Needless to say, he already understood that it was not that the spear tip could not be put into the storage bag. It was just that his storage bag was really old. He was afraid that the space inside the storage bag was unstable. The spear tip was really too heavy. If it was placed there for too long, the entire storage bag would be destroyed. Thinking that this was a storage bag that he had exchanged spirit stones for, Xiaohua immediately felt distressed. He hurriedly raised the storage bag, and with a very hidden movement, he put the spear tip into the space in his mind. And fortunately, there was no change in the space. Damn it, in the future, I can't put anything valuable in the storage bag. I'll just treat it as a cover. Thinking about how he had been robbed by Shi Wuming for no reason, Xiaohua's heart was bleeding. It was really an unexpected disaster. If he could have put less things in the storage bag, he would have suffered less losses. This old monster, she is really too much. Why did he force a deal without any reason? Why did he have to force someone to sell him a magic tool? Xiaohua could not help but wonder. Moreover, he only let me know his name. Humph, only a fool would believe that by saying his name, he would be able to escape with his life. Or use his name to do something that doesn't require him to take responsibility. If he was really sincere, he should have at least given me a token or something. Xiaohua did not think about it. No matter what method Shi Wuming used to give him the promise, at least he bought a magic tool that was worth a piece of top-grade spirit stone. Xiaohua only spent less than a piece of top-grade spirit stone to get the magic tool. He even spared his promise. What a good deal. It was too late to be secretly happy. At this time, the restriction below Xiaohua's feet was still slowly recovering. Xiaohua also lost interest in staying here any longer, and hurriedly left this place, afraid that he would be stopped by some eccentric senior again. Fortunately, after he put on the concealment mask and left this area, no one stopped him. Although Xiaohua had lost interest in going inside the EG, his talisman brushes and ink had all been taken away by Shi Wuming. He could only look for another stall to replenish his talisman crafting materials. After searching for a while, he found that this stall seemed to sell yellow talismans. There were not many talisman crafting materials. Just as he was about to turn around and look for his original spot, Xiaohua's gaze fell on a rather large stall. This stall was surrounded by many cultivators. From time to time, some cultivators would take out spirit stones or other items to exchange with the stall owner. The stall owner was not alone, but a man and a woman. The two of them looked very similar and should be brother and sister. On this stall, there were yellow talismans and medicinal pills. These were all things that Xiaohua urgently needed. Walking to the front of the stall, Xiaohua observed. There were not many types of medicinal pills. There were Jiyu pill, Emojia pill, smoke feather pill, and so on. They were medicinal pills that could increase magic power, but their effects were slightly inferior to the Peiyuan pill. As for those yellow talismans, they were all Dan guiding talismans, Dan controlling talismans, Dan condensing talismans, Dan collecting talismans, Dan guiding talismans, Dan igniting talismans, 3 Yang talismans, and so on. There were even saltpeter, fire gourd, and other items placed on the side, which were essential for refining medicinal pills. Xiaohua stood still for a moment. He looked at the items that the other cultivators were exchanging and the spirit stones they were taking out. He had a rough idea in his heart. At this time there was a gap. The female cultivator smiled like a flower and said to Xiaohua, "Fellow Taoist, the medicinal pills that my Imperial Pill School concocts are well known. May I know what kind of pills fellow Taoist wants?" Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, "Fellow Taoist, the prices of these medicinal pills are rather expensive. I also know a little about the art of pill concoction. I only want to buy some necessary yellow talismans, saltpeter, and other items from your school." Fellow Taoists' words are different. The medicinal pills of my humble school are all genuine goods. Moreover, they were all concocted by the elders of my school. Of course, they need the corresponding spirit stones. If fellow Taoist concocts them yourself, it will take a lot of effort, and the quality of the medicinal pills won't be good. It would be better to just buy the medicinal pills directly. The female cultivator was not angry and only said softly, "Hee, it's better to teach a man how to fish than to teach him how to fish. Fortunately, it's good to be self-reliant." Xiaohua said, "It's fine. I will prepare a set of yellow talismans and saltpeter for fellow Taoist. I just don't know if fellow Taoist will use spirit stones or items to exchange for them." As the female cultivator said this, she walked to the side, and began to pick up the yellow talismans used for pill concoction. I don't have any spirit stones on me. Only some spiritual herbs. Fellow Taoist, please appraise them. Xiao Hua said confidently. It's best to have spiritual herbs. They're more useful than any spirit stones. What my imperial pill school needs to concoct medicinal pills are old spiritual herbs. The female cultivator was not surprised. She smiled and prepared the yellow talismans and saltpeter. But fellow Taoist, these spiritual herbs. The female cultivator straightened her body and asked. Here, fellow Taoist, please take a look. Just now, there were already cultivators who took out spiritual herbs that were more than 100 years old. Xiao Hua's courage grew a bit, and he took out a few spiritual herbs that were more than 200 years old. Alas, Xiao Hua had no other choice. He actually wanted to take out some of the younger ones, but the ones in the space behind his head were all planted early on in Yellow Flower Ridge. All of them were around 200 years old. He couldn't reduce them even if he wanted to. Seeing the spiritual herbs in Xiao Hua's hand, the female cultivator's eyes lit up. She didn't look very surprised and only praised. Fellow Taoist, you're indeed skilled in concocting medicinal pills. These spiritual herbs are also old enough. They're the best quality spiritual herbs that my humble sect has seen today. As she said that, she handed over the yellow talismans, saltpeter, and other items in her hand. When Xiao Hua took them, he also handed the spiritual herbs to the female cultivator. The female cultivator counted them and said with a smile, Fellow Taoist, these spiritual herbs are indeed a bit too much. How about this? I give fellow Taoists some more yellow talismans and saltpeter. There's no need. Fellow Taoist, if it's cheap. How about I take one of your precious school's medicinal pills? Xiao Hua said with a smile. The female cultivator shook her head. That won't do. Fellow Taoist, you don't have enough spiritual herbs. Since that's the case, I can only give my last spiritual herb to fellow Taoist. As Xiao Hua said that, he took out another spiritual herb and handed it over. Chapter 1326. With this spiritual herb, although it's still not enough, it's not far from it. The female cultivator was very straightforward. She took the spiritual herb, and without saying anything else, she took out a variety of medicinal pills, put them into a jade bottle, and handed it to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua was overjoyed. He reached out to take it, and after thanking her he hesitated for a moment, then asked tentatively, Fellow Taoist, I want to ask, does your sect have pill recipes to exchange? Pill recipes? The female cultivator was stunned, and her face immediately froze. She said coldly, Fellow Taoist, are you joking with me? Pill recipes are the same as cultivation techniques. Every sect treasures them, so who would exchange them for no reason? Since fellow Taoist is also exchanging for pill refinement, could it be that fellow Taoist also wants to exchange pill recipes? If fellow Taoist has such intentions, please take them out. My imperial pill school will accept them all. Moreover, will accept them at all costs. Xiao Hua blushed. Fortunately, he was wearing a camouflage cloak, so he wasn't afraid of being seen by others. He turned around and left the stall. The female cultivator didn't pay attention to him. She only thought that Xiao Hua was teasing her, so she turned around and greeted the others. Sigh, not only are cultivation techniques hard to find, pill recipes are also hard to find. Although Sect Master has refined the Peiyuan pill before, I only watched from the side and didn't know the details. Even if I had spiritual herbs, I wouldn't have been able to refine it. Xiao Hua was somewhat depressed. Being a loose cultivator is indeed very difficult. Fortunately, I've already found a way to cultivate quickly, coupled with the fact that I can refine yellow talismans. Although I'm much slower than ordinary people, at least other people can run while I walk. It's much better than crawling like a snail. Xiao Hua comforted himself as he thought. His eyes also looked around. He didn't give up on his evil intentions, hoping for some kind of miracle. Unfortunately, even when the stall was about to end, he still didn't see any words related to pill recipes. Forget it, I'd better exchange for some talisman crafting materials. When I return to the inn later, I still have to craft talismans and cultivate. Xiao Hua extinguished his thoughts. He casually stopped at a stall and picked out talisman brushes, talisman ink and talisman paper. Xiaohua was a bit conflicted. What do you think? They don't want spiritual herbs. They only want spirit stones. Fellow Taoist, you can take I's spiritual grasses and exchange them with other stalls. Why do you want spirit stones? Xiaohua was very puzzled. Fellow Taoist, I'll be returning to the mountain tomorrow to pack up a few things and wait for the trade fair in 10 days. My sect isn't good at concocting pills, so I want fellow Taoist spiritual plants to trade for items. Rather than using spiritual plants to trade for items, it would be better to directly use spirit stones. Could it be that fellow Taoist didn't see this? With that, he pointed. When Xiaohua looked, he saw that it was written very clearly. Spirit stones only. All right. Xiaohua looked at the sky and remembered that there was still a mid-grade spirit stone on the body of the puppet in his space. He had no choice but to conceal it and take out the spirit stone from his space. Looking at the spirit stones Xiaohua handed over, that cultivator shook his head and said, Fellow Taoist, these spirit stones, have you used them before? Yes. Xiaohua didn't deny it and calmly asked, Fellow Taoist, won't you accept these spirit stones? It's not that I won't accept them, but fellow Taoists should also know that the spiritual energy of the world inside a used spirit stone has already been reduced. It can't be used as a complete spirit stone for exchange. Xiaohua naturally didn't know about this, but he also didn't say anything. He only smiled and said, Then fellow Taoists can just follow the rules. And although fellow Taoist has used these spirit stones before, the quality is still good. They should be able to be exchanged for 80 low-grade spirit stones. If fellow Taoist feels that it's appropriate, I can deduct the spirit stones used to craft these talismans and exchange the remaining spirit stones for fellow Taoist? After waiting for Xiaohua to nod, that cultivator took out 10 low-grade spirit stones. Xiaohua sweated profusely. Fortunately, he only chose a broken talisman brush. Most of the materials were talisman paper and talisman ink. This incomplete mid-grade spirit stone could still be used. Xiaohua received the spirit stones and hurriedly returned to the inn. At this moment, he didn't have any spirit stones in his storage pouch, and the inn didn't allow people to owe money. Tomorrow, Xiaohua had to bring back some mid-grade spirit stones to continue the account. Although there were spiritual plants in the space, wouldn't it take a lot of time to obtain them? If he exchanged them, then there would be one less. It was far cheaper to refine yellow talismans, a method that could be used to cultivate and exchange for spirit stones. After entering the inn's room, Xiaohua opened the restriction. After adjusting his breathing for a moment, he began to refine yellow talismans. First, he made several fireball talismans, then several confinement talismans. When Xiaohua once again dipped his 10 fingers in talisman ink and prepared to refine the fireball talismans, his heart suddenly stirred. He inwardly said, The talismans used to refine the fireball talismans are simple. The amount of magic power used is also small, but the amount of spiritual chi of heaven and earth wrapped in it is also small. When refining the confinement talismans, the talismans are complex, and the amount of magic power and spiritual chi of heaven and earth used is also extremely large. But why did I use the same amount of talisman ink? Could it be that when refining yellow talismans, the amount of talisman ink used can also be reduced? Other talisman masters probably wouldn't think of this kind of idea. They only thought of how to perfectly refine yellow talismans, how to use more talisman ink to draw more spiritual chi of heaven and earth into the yellow talismans. They didn't care about using more talisman ink. But our Xiaohua, he was born stingy. Moreover, he was embarrassingly short of money today, so he had no choice but to instinctively consider this kind of matter. Xiaohua was most willing to do things that were frugal. He very carefully controlled his magic power, and used the least amount of talisman ink possible to wrap the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Sure enough, it was just as Xiaohua thought. The amount of talisman ink could really be reduced. Xiaohua tried a dozen times, until the amount of talisman ink he could use was just barely enough to wrap the spiritual chi of heaven and earth onto the talisman paper. Only then did he stop. When he turned back and carefully calculated, he shockingly discovered that the talisman ink that could only refine 10 fireball talismans in the past, He could actually refine 13 of them now. The amount of talisman ink he could use had increased by 30%. Moreover, when Xiaohua regulated his breathing, he discovered that his magic power had increased by a lot compared to before, and his control of magic power had become more precise. Although the increase in magic power wasn't much, to Xiaohua, any increase meant that he could catch up with the cultivation speed of others a little bit. How could he not be happy? In the midst of his joy, Xiaohua suddenly thought, "E-market will be in 10 days. At that time, there will be even more people coming, and there will also be a lot of things that can be used. It seems that I have to refine more yellow talismans. Perhaps I can exchange them for a lot of spiritual stones." That's right, at that time, the spiritual grass can also be exchanged for a good price. That won't do. On the day of E-market, there will definitely be people from the 100 Herbs Gate. If I take out the spiritual grass, it might attract the attention of the 100 Herbs Gate disciples. Although I have the mystic grass, it can't change its shape or hide its cultivation, so I will still be easily recognized by the 100 Herbs Gate. This spiritual grass, I absolutely can't reveal it. Xiaohua unconsciously came to a realization. Perhaps this E-market is already not bad, so it's better not to go to E-market. Xiaohua thought for a moment, but couldn't make up his mind, so he simply stopped thinking about it. He only focused on refining confinement talismans, using all his intelligence and wisdom on the great frugal research of how to use the least amount of talisman ink to attach the most amount of spiritual chi of heaven and earth. It was said that there was no time in cultivation, and refining yellow talismans and earning spiritual stones also had no time. In the blink of an eye, Xiaohua was immersed in refining yellow talismans, taking them to E-market to exchange for spiritual stones, talisman papers, and other things, cultivating. He almost forgot that he still had to join Tianqi. The confinement talismans refined by Xiaohua weren't as good as the fireball talismans he refined. They could only be considered as middle-grade talismans, and there was still a certain gap between them and high-grade talismans. But even so, it still allowed him to earn several hundred middle-grade spiritual stones. After all, that was a high-grade confinement talisman, and middle-grade confinement talismans were also very popular in E-market. Even Xiaohua almost thought of setting up a stall in E-market himself. It's just that Xiaohua didn't see He Zhongyu and Ling Zhongyu for the past few days, and there was no suitable person to ask at E-Bazaar either. Only then did he put down his thoughts. And these two people probably left Jingbua City to prepare for E-City. I've stayed in Jingbua City for so many days. Why is there still no news from Tianqi? Xiaohua walked in front of E-market on this day, and suddenly thought, the middle-grade spiritual stone that Senior Qing gave me, I'm afraid it's already been used up? Could it be there's no chance of joining Tianqi? Thinking about it, it was also very possible. The cultivation method is gone. The pill formula is probably also gone. Xiaohua was a little disappointed, and he couldn't help but have an impulse to send out the summoning talisman. But before his hand touched his ear, he stopped. Relying on others alone, this cultivation will always be dependent. Other individual cultivators can survive and improve their cultivation. Why can't I? And it's that 1,000-feet-old man, right? I heard from the sect master that he could cultivate to the gold core realm. So why can't I? Now I still have a cultivation method for the second layer of the aura refining realm to use. And I still have a lot of time to find a cultivation method. I don't believe I can't walk a path to heaven on my own. Xiaohua's harvest these days filled him with confidence in cultivation, and it was also true. Xiaohua refined yellow talismans every day, comprehended the heavenly Tao, and comprehended cultivation methods. His cultivation increased a little every day, and it was indeed much stronger than when he was in Shanghuaming. Moreover, from the looks of it, as long as he had a source of spiritual stones, there was nothing wrong with living in this inn for a year or so. However, the path of cultivation was very long, so how could he just stay in an inn? Forget it, I'd better earn some spiritual stones first. After all, Tianqi didn't give me a final word. Maybe they still haven't gathered enough talisman masters. Xiaohua shook his head, then strode towards Yi. As soon as he entered, a fourth layer aura refining cultivator turned around from an extremely distant corner. He stared at Xiaohua's back for a long time before quickly chasing after him. Xiaohua had been a little careless these days. Moreover, that cultivator was really far away. Even if Xiaohua stopped to watch, he might not be able to see anything. When Xiaohua entered Yi, he was very familiar with the way. He didn't stop at the nearby stalls and directly walked into Yi. Although Xiaohua was a little relaxed outside Yi, he was still cautious inside. He tried his best not to go to any stalls that he had already been to. There were many similar stalls in Yi, so he didn't have to worry about finding a suitable stall. Chapter 1327. Xiaohua first found a stall and bought a lot of talisman ink and talisman paper. Then he didn't stop at all, and went to other places. Xiaohua bought mid-grade talisman paper and low-grade talisman ink. Although the quantity wasn't small, he could absolutely not attract the attention of others. Through Xiaohua's experiments these past few days, he found that no matter if it was high-grade talisman ink or mid-grade talisman ink, the fireball talismans he refined were all high-grade. It had nothing to do with talisman ink or talisman paper. However, if he used low-grade talisman paper, he could only refine low-grade confinement talismans. If he used mid-grade or high-grade talisman paper, he could refine mid-grade confinement talismans. Therefore, Xiaohua naturally tried to be as frugal as possible, and used the least amount of spirit stones to refine the most yellow talismans. After walking for a while, Xiaohua suddenly felt a little strange and his footsteps slightly stagnated. When he turned a corner, he slightly turned his head to take a look. There were many cultivators behind Xiaohua. Some were foundation establishment cultivators, some were aura refining cultivators, some were covering their faces, and some were swaggering. However, these people were all looking at the stall and no one paid any attention to him. A little cultivator who looked like he was only at the second layer of the aura refining realm. Even if he covered his face, no one would be suspicious. Strange, could it be that I didn't rest well these past few days? Xiaohua frowned and muttered inwardly. Then with a flash he went in another direction. After a while, Xiaohua's figure appeared in front of a small yellow talisman stall. Most of the stall was already empty, and there were only a few fireball talismans, ice talismans, and so on. A dark and thin old man was sitting there with his hands hanging down, seemingly bored to death. At this moment, Xiaohua was very familiar with this place. He stepped forward and cupped his hands. "Fellow Taoist, please." "Hee, fellow Taoist. What can I do for you?" The dark and thin old man seemed to understand Xiaohua's meaning, and returned the greeting with a smile. "Fellow Taoist, please take a look at this confinement talisman. What do you think?" As he spoke, Xiaohua handed over a confinement talisman. The dark skinny old man nodded as he received it. After carefully looking at it, he nodded slightly and said, "Not bad. It's already very rare and commendable for such a high-level confinement talisman to be refined to such an extent. In my opinion, it should be above the middle grade. Alright, I wonder if fellow Taoist wants to buy it?" Xiaohua was secretly delighted. The old man looked at his empty stall and smiled. "Of course. Since fellow Taoist came to find this poor Taoist, it means that you have good intentions. How could this poor Taoist let fellow Taoist down? Please make a bid, fellow Taoist." Xiaohua didn't beat around the bush. He felt a trace of uneasiness in his heart. Well, a middle grade, high-grade yellow talisman usually costs 120 low-grade spirit stones. I'm sure you know that. If you're willing, I'll pay 100 low-grade spirit stones. What do you think?" The old man said sincerely. Fellow Taoist Xiaohua's expression was unreadable, but his tone was full of regret. He said, "I walked all the way here and already saw the market clearly. If it wasn't for the fact that I didn't want to go any further, why would I stop in front of fellow Taoist's stall? Fellow Taoist, you must be fated to give me such a low price. This really hurts. How much do you think is appropriate?" The old man's expression didn't change. "Normally, I'll pay 140 low-grade spirit stones. Who told I to be fated with you? How about 130? Xiaohua said without any trace of politeness. "Hee, fellow Taoist, I can't take advantage of fellow Taoist's price. I can't agree. If fellow Taoist really wants to make a move, then 110 low-grade spirit stones." The old man looked at Xiao Hua and said in a low voice, I know the origin of fellow Taoist spirit stones. If fellow Taoist agrees, I will give fellow Taoist some benefits. Xiao Hua pretended to ponder and said awkwardly, fellow Taoist, you're making things difficult for I. My bottom line is 120 low-grade spirit stones. If it's less, I won't be able to report back. Then forget it. The old man waved his hand and said, your bottom line is too high. I can't deal with it. Fellow Taoist, please go to the side and take a look. Oh okay, Xiao Hua nodded and said with a smile. Then fellow I's 200 or so middle-grade yellow talismans will benefit others. What? 200 or so talismans? The old man became anxious when he heard this and said, oh fellow Taoist, you said we were fated. Why didn't you say so earlier? I want all of these yellow talismans. Don't. Fellow I's yellow talismans are 125 low-grade spirit stones each. Fellow Taoist, don't miss here. Xiao Hua's voice was a bit hoarse. 125? The old man was stunned when he heard this, but then he said with a smile, there's nothing to say. Fellow Taoist, we're fated. I accept this price. The old man was very clear that most of the talismans in EG were 5 elements yellow talismans. High-grade confinement talismans like this were still too few. If there were confinement talismans in his stall, not to mention that each one could be sold for 150 low-grade spirit stones, there would be many people buying confinement talismans along with 5 elements yellow talismans. Then fellow Taoist, please prepare the spirit stones. Xiao Hua said with a smile, I have 230 confinement talismans. Okay. It should be 287 middle-grade spirit stones and 50 low-grade spirit stones. I'll sell it to you for 290 middle-grade spirit stones. I don't know if fellow Taoist wants middle-grade spirit stones or high-grade spirit stones. The old man said very quickly, and I'll take middle-grade spirit stones. I won't be able to share high-grade spirit stones with senior brothers when I go back. Xiao Hua nodded. Okay. The old man said while dividing the spirit stones in the storage bag. He said with a smile, fellow Taoist, you have so many yellow talismans. Actually, you can also occupy a stall yourself. Xiao Hua's heart moved, but he immediately waved his hand and said, I'm just running errands. I don't care about anything else. Occupying a stall is a bit troublesome. It's easy to attract attention. Ha ha ha, fellow Taoist, you're thinking too much. The old man reached out and took the storage bag Xiao Hua handed over. He put all the spirit stones inside, then took the confinement talismans Xiao Hua handed over. He said with a smile, you only need to pay Jingbua City a low-grade spirit stone every day. Anyone can set up a stall here. Fellow Taoist, you're wearing camouflage clothing. Who would know who you are? That's true. Xiao Hua said with a smile, but he immediately took the storage bag and waved his hand saying, I still have to cultivate more. I don't have the time to deal with this. Since fellow Taoist doesn't want to do it, if these yellow talismans are cheap in the future, come and give them to I. The old man cupped his hands and said. Xiao Hua didn't immediately answer. He lowered his head and pondered. He looked back several times and didn't see any eyesores. Then he raised his head and said with a smile, if fellow Taoist has some pill recipes here that you can provide to I can naturally consider it. Alas, fellow Taoist, you're asking for too much. The old man smiled bitterly. My Yenxing sect only uses yellow talismans to maintain. We don't have pill recipes. Fellow Taoist, you're really making things difficult for I. Xiao Hua didn't say anything. He cupped his hands and was about to leave. The old man said again, however, there are many cultivators on the day of the exchange. Fellow Taoist, you can come and take a look with your sect's senior brothers. Maybe you can come across some ordinary pill recipes. And thank you, fellow Taoist. Xiao Hua nodded and left. After waiting for a while, Xiao Hua nimbly hid in a remote place. He stuck out half of his head and stared at the yellow talisman stall just now. He saw that there weren't many people in front of the stall just now. After the old man wrote a few words, the number of people patronizing the stall also increased. However, after the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, those people gradually dispersed. Among them, There wasn't anyone that could attract Xiaohua's attention. It's really strange. Could it be that I'm a bird frightened by the twang of a bough? Xiaohua was depressed. Just as he was about to turn around, he heard a rather familiar voice in front of him shouting, This is just an ordinary jade pendant. How dare you ask for a piece of top-grade spirit stone?" Xiaohua was greatly surprised. He looked as far as he could, and saw a group of people surrounding a stall. The voice was coming from there. Xiaohua, who quickly walked over to take a look, didn't expect that right after he left the stall, a cultivator dressed in camouflage clothes would walk over and point at the words written by the dark-skinned cultivator. He said in a hoarse voice, "Fellow Taoist, you actually have a confinement talisman here. You didn't seem to have one just now, right?" The dark and thin old man said with a smile, "I didn't have one just now, but that doesn't mean I don't have one now. I don't know if fellow Taoist needs it. This is comparable to a high-grade confinement talisman. I only sell it for 160 low-grade spirit stones. And the price can be considered okay, but I want more. Do you have enough confinement talismans in your house?" The dark and thin old man didn't doubt him and said with a smile, "I have a lot of them waiting for the day of the exchange. If fellow Taoist really wants them, I'll give you 10 low-grade spirit stones for each yellow talisman. I have more than 200 talismans here." Ah. The cultivator was clearly somewhat shocked and almost couldn't believe it. "What? Do you think I's price is too high?" The dark and thin old man sneered. "It will be the exchange market in a few days. I'm afraid the price of this confinement talisman will rise to 2 mid-grade spirit stones. If fellow Taoist doesn't make a move now, it will be over when the time comes." And at this time, there were also several cultivators who were attracted by the black-armed old man's handwriting and walked over. "Sai, let's think about it again." That cultivator was somewhat hesitant, but the dark and thin old man didn't care and turned to greet the others. That cultivator stood for a moment and followed the few cultivators who left. Although Xiaohua was watching from afar, how could he know the conversation? Even if he heard it? What could he know? How could he possibly know that under that bewilderment, there was a face filled with greed whispering, 150 low-grade spirit stones for a confinement talisman, and 2 white-yellow talismans. Then, how many spirit stones would that be? This guy has been continuously appearing in the exchange market for many days, I'm afraid. Could it be that there are already a few top-grade spirit stones in that storage pouch? That cultivator was also cautious. After leaving the stall, he didn't turn back and didn't look in the direction where Xiaohua left. After walking for a long time, he turned back and looked around. Xiaohua heard a familiar voice and walked towards the crowd. When he got closer, he saw a person standing in front of a stall with a mess of things. He couldn't help but feel strange. Chapter 13:28. Standing in front of the stall was a boy about 10 years old. It was the Xuanyan school's disciple that Xiaohua saw outside Jingpa City, and was mocked the first time he came to EG. The current boy was far from the arrogant Xiaohua saw. His face was flushed with anger, and there was a trace of stubbornness and sorrow in his eyes. Looking at his hand, he was holding an extremely ordinary-looking jade pendant. "Fellow Taoist, although your cultivation is higher than I's, you can't force a trade. I already told fellow Taoist that this is a jade talisman, not an ordinary jade pendant. If fellow Taoist wants to trade, you can take out a top-grade spirit stone or something of equivalent value. As long as I is satisfied, I will definitely fulfill fellow Taoist's request." The stall owner was a tall man with a pink and white face. He was about 27 or 28 years old, but his cultivation was only at the 3rd level of Qi refinement. You rogue cultivator are unreasonable. Although I haven't seen a jade talisman, I know about the so-called yellow talismans, spirit talismans, and jade talismans. Your jade pendant doesn't have the slightest bit of spiritual energy. How can it be a jade talisman? The boy said hurriedly, his voice trembling. "Fellow Taoist, it's true that I am a rogue cultivator, but who said that rogue cultivators can't have jade talismans? Jade talismans themselves have runes, so of course they don't have spiritual energy of heaven and earth? Is there a need for I to say this to fellow Taoist? Who knows if fellow Taoist was sleeping when fellow Taoist's teacher was teaching?" The rogue cultivator said without any trace of politeness. Ha ha ha, when the surrounding crowd heard this, they all laughed loudly. I am a disciple of Xuanyan school. My Xuanyan school's rules are very strict. Who dares to slack off when the teacher is teaching? The boy defended himself. Xuanyan school? The rogue cultivator was slightly stunned, then laughed. I only said it was possible. I never said that your school wasn't. Fellow Taoists, you can all testify. Of course we all heard it. A busybody said loudly. I may not have seen a jade talisman, but I swear on my status as a disciple of Xuanyan school that this is truly an ordinary jade pendant. And definitely not some jade talisman. The boy said through gritted teeth. Fellow Taoist, since this jade talisman belongs to I, and I say it's a jade talisman, then it's a jade talisman. Even if it's not a jade talisman, if I want a top-quality spirit stone, then it's worth a top-quality spirit stone. If fellow Taoist wants it, then pay a top-quality spirit stone first. The rogue cultivator was still arrogant as he laughed. The boy looked at the jade pendant in his hand. His hands were trembling as he shouted. I won't give it to you. What are you going to do? Fellow Taoists, take a look. This is how Xuanyan school's disciples do things. Xuanyan school's disciples are bullying others. Xuanyan school's disciples are stealing other people's jade talismans. That rogue cultivator immediately cried out in horror. You shut up. The boy stomped his foot, and the red flush on his face receded, replaced by an ashen expression. How many spirit stones do you want? I definitely don't have that many top-quality spirit stones. The boy whispered. It's fine if you don't have spirit stones. Let's see what fellow Taoist has in his storage pouch. As long as it's worth spirit stones. The rogue cultivator narrowed his eyes and said. There are things in my storage pouch that belong to my school. I can't let you see it, the boy said firmly. So it's like that. The rogue cultivator's eyes darted around. He clapped his hands and a silenced talisman appeared. The two of them began to talk. If fellow Taoist doesn't have spirit stones, you can use your school's cultivation method to exchange for it. No one else will know. I will definitely not tell anyone. The rogue cultivator knew that there was a silenced talisman, but he still said softly. When the boy heard this, he shook his head. No, that's absolutely impossible. Then I will take a step back. Xuanyan school is the leading school of alchemy in the country of Xi. If fellow Taoist has your school's Peiyuan pill, foundation establishment pill, and the like, take out a dozen of them. I will exchange this jade talisman with you. Peiyuan pill, foundation establishment pill? A dozen of them? The boy smiled bitterly. Fellow Taoist, you're daydreaming. Do you think I will have them? Then there's no other way. The rogue cultivator spread out his hands helplessly. These are all things I need. I don't need anything else. Fellow Taoist, please return the jade talisman to I. As he spoke, the rogue cultivator stretched out his hand. The boy took half a step back and hid the jade talisman behind him. Oh right. I almost forgot. If fellow Taoist has your school's pill formula, take out two. It should be fine. The rogue cultivator casually looked behind the boy and suddenly said, Pill formula? The boy's eyes lit up. He thought for a moment and said, Will an incomplete pill formula do? What kind of pill formula? The rogue cultivator's eyes lit up even more as he smiled. The boy shook his head. I don't know. It's just an incomplete Then I'm very sorry. The rogue cultivator waved his hand and removed the silenced talisman. He said loudly, Since fellow Taoist isn't willing, then hand over the jade talisman. Perhaps someone else can afford a supreme-grade spirit stone. At this moment, a cultivator wearing a Taoist robe and camouflage walked over from behind the boy. He bowed and said, Fellow Taoist, is this really a jade talisman? Can you let I take a look? Of course, but the jade talisman is in the hands of the Xuanyan cult disciple. He doesn't want to return it to I. The rogue cultivator smiled bitterly at the boy. Oh, Xuanyan cult is a major cult in the country of Xi. Their disciples would definitely not be so rude. I believe this fellow Taoist is in urgent need of this jade talisman. The cultivator said gently. I wonder if this fellow Taoist can let I take a look. The boy looked at the cultivator. After a long while he raised the jade talisman. However, he still held it in his hand and refused to let go. I see. The cultivator looked carefully for a moment and nodded slightly. He asked, fellow Taoist, do you not have a supreme grade spirit stone? The boy nodded. Seeing this, the cultivator took his storage bag and handed it to the rogue cultivator. He smiled and said, fellow Taoist, this is I's storage bag. Fellow Taoist can take a look. Although it is not worth a supreme grade spirit stone, it is not much different. Without waiting for the cultivator to finish speaking, the rogue cultivator took the bag and opened it. He smiled and said, it is. Could it be that fellow Taoist wants this jade talisman? That is indeed the case. I like this thing very much and am prepared to exchange the items in the storage bag for this jade talisman. The cultivator said slowly. Fellow Taoist, this is just an ordinary jade talisman, not a jade talisman. You must not be fooled. The boy was very anxious and shouted, haha, fellow Taoist, the items in the storage bag belong to this poor Taoist. This poor Taoist can do whatever he wants with it. This poor Taoist likes this jade talisman, so it's normal for me to exchange it for it. The cultivator smiled and said, fellow Taoist, please give this poor Taoist the jade talisman. The boy bit his lips with his teeth and was very hesitant. Sigh, fellow Taoist, if no one came to exchange, I could have negotiated with you. Since there is someone who knows the value of this jade talisman, fellow Taoist, please return the jade talisman to I. Xuanyan sect is a large sect and has a good reputation. You must not ruin your reputation because of such a small matter. The rogue cultivator persuaded. But the boy was very hesitant. Oh, if fellow Taoist likes it, of course you can take out a corresponding amount of spirit stones to exchange with this fellow Taoist. After all, fellow Taoist saw this talisman before I. If fellow Taoist takes out spirit stones now, I will not be able to compete with fellow Taoist. Fellow Taoist, can you give me 2 days? I will go to my fellow Taoist to gather some spirit stones. The boy begged. The rogue cultivator glanced and shook his head. I could have done it, but I am afraid it is not possible now. Sure enough, that cultivator smiled and said, if fellow Taoist does not have spirit stones, it is better that you give the jade talisman to I. I am still in a hurry to return to the mountain. But when the boy heard this, his face was extremely ugly. He clenched his little fists and finally gritted his teeth and shouted, okay. As he spoke, he was about to untie the storage bag at his waist. Seeing this, the rogue cultivator's eyes revealed joy at this moment. A figure walked over quickly and grabbed the boy's wrist, berating, you boy, why are you wasting time here? Our senior brothers have been waiting for you for a long time. Hurry up and come with me. That boy was shocked at first because his wrist was grabbed because of his uneasiness. Then, when he heard the berating, his face turned ashen. However, when he saw the appearance of the person who came, his face became extremely shocked again and he shouted, you are. Before he could finish speaking, an irresistible force tightened around his wrist, and a sharp pain came from his wrist. Ouch! Ouch! The boy could not help but cry out. Who was it? Of course it was Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua first looked at the boy talking to the rogue cultivator with interest. Like many of the cultivators around him, he was a bystander and had long known that the rogue cultivator raised the price because the boy had taken a fancy to the jade pendant and showed that he had a certain relationship with the jade pendant. At first, Xiao Hua did not have the intention to help. After all, the other party was a famous sect and had treated him coldly twice. He had no reason to use his warm face to stick to the other parties, but later, when he saw another cultivator stand up and want the ordinary jade pendant, Xiao Hua knew that this person was on the same side as the rogue cultivator. He immediately thought of what happened to Xiao Xianrui, Gong Mingwei, and Zhang Qingxiao at the e-market last time and felt pity for them. When he saw that the boy actually wanted to open the storage pouch, he was even more shocked. With his knowledge, there was definitely more than just spirit stones and medicinal pills inside the storage pouch. Otherwise, seeing how important the jade pendant was to the boy would have already changed and would not have waited until now. And now, the boy had been deceived by the two people and had lost his mind. If there really was something in the storage pouch that Sun Yan taught him, then the boy would have taken the jade pendant. But what about his own life? Suddenly, Xiaohua could not stand still. The rogue cultivator on his left and right was only a third-layer qi refining cultivator. Although the other cultivator was wearing a camouflage robe, and he could not see their cultivation level, he was afraid that they would not exceed the fourth layer of qi refining. Even if Xiaohua could not beat them, he could still escape. Therefore, he quickly stepped forward and grabbed the boy's wrist. Chapter 1329. Xiaohua took advantage of that Xuanyan schoolboy's restless state to grab his wrist. Xiaohua didn't think too much about it, but as soon as his hand touched that boy's wrist, his fingers immediately moved slightly. His hand exerted force, causing half of the boy's body to go limp and numb. He could only cry out in shock. Afterwards he couldn't say anything else. If I wasn't here, wouldn't you have made a mistake? Xiaohua said coldly. Why aren't you quickly returning the item? As he said this, his right hand brushed past the boy's wrist that was holding the jade pendant. As if struck by lightning, the boy's hand loosened. Xiaohua took the jade pendant and threw it to that cultivator who came later. He said with a sneer, "Since fellow Taoist has taken a fancy to this item, and my junior martial brother doesn't have enough spirit stones, of course he'll give it to fellow Taoist." Then he turned to that individual cultivator and said coldly, "Although my junior martial brother is young and inexperienced, he's still a disciple of Xuanyan school. He won't be deceived by others." That individual cultivator's face was filled with shock, but he still defended himself. "Fellow Taoist, I have a real jade talisman." How could Xiaohua say anything more to him? If it wasn't for the fact that he had to pretend and say a few polite words, he would have already pulled the boy away. However, just as he was about to leave, that boy didn't know what he was thinking and struggled with all his might. Unfortunately, the boy's strength was too weak. Xiaohua's hand was like cast iron and didn't move at all. The boy couldn't help but blush and shout, "Who the hell are you?" Xiaohua was very anxious. He reached out and slapped the boy's face. He berated, "Don't talk too much. Wait until we return to the mountain, and I'll settle accounts with you. You dare hit me?" The boy was stunned. Although Xiaohua held back, there was still a 5-finger mark left on the boy's face. It was extremely obvious. Xiaohua didn't dare to stop. Taking advantage of the boy's daze, he pulled the boy up from the ground and quickly walked outside. As he walked, he scolded, "Everyone disperse. What's there to see?" The surrounding people saw Xiaohua grab the fourth-layer qi refining boy and slap him across the face. The boy didn't even have a chance to resist, so of course they wouldn't take Xiaohua's second-layer qi refining level seriously. When they heard Xiaohua's reprimand, they all hurriedly stepped aside and gradually dispersed. Xiaohua walked very fast. He was familiar with the surroundings. After turning a few corners and seeing that there was no one around, he looked back and saw that there was no one around. Seeing that there was no one around, he quickly let go of his hand. The boy was still dizzy from the beating. He had just woken up when Xiaohua let go of his hand. The soreness and numbness in his body also disappeared, and his hands and feet regained their freedom. The boy immediately jumped up and cursed, "You shameless loose cultivator, you actually dared to disturb this young master's business. You actually dared to beat this young master. If this young master doesn't take your life, then this young master's surname isn't Xiao." As he spoke, the boy slapped his storage pouch and took out several yellow talismans. "Fellow Taoist, you must not make a mistake. This is Jingbua City's EG. If you dare to attack, how can the disciples of Jingbua City forgive you? Even if you're a disciple of Xuanyan school, I'm afraid you won't have a good end." Xiaohua was greatly alarmed and hastily retreated. The boy's yellow talisman had already been activated, but after hearing Xiaohua's words, he immediately realized that fighting was prohibited in Jingbua City. This was something his master had instructed him to do before he left the mountain. Wouldn't his yellow talisman immediately provoke endless trouble? This young master knows you. Just wait and see." The boy angrily put away the yellow talisman and said, "I know you're a loose cultivator abandoned by the heavens. One day you'll definitely, fellow Taoist. I's good intentions have been taken as ill intent by you. Could it be that you've really been blinded by lard?" Didn't you see that the stall owner was in cahoots with the cultivator who came later? Xiaohua smiled wryly. He had no choice but to stop and explain. If you don't believe me, go back and find your senior brother. Have him look again and you'll know. Huh? The boy wasn't stupid. It was just that when he was in the middle of the situation just now, his mind had reached a dead end. Now that he thought about it, how could he not know? He couldn't help but cry out in alarm. His forehead was covered with sweat, and his small hand naturally went to protect the storage pouch at his waist. All right, since fellow Taoist knows, I'll leave first. Fellow Taoist has the protection of your sect, so you don't need to be afraid of being targeted. I, however, am very afraid. Xiaohua cupped his hands in salute and turned to leave. The boy clenched his teeth and opened his mouth as if to call out to Xiaohua, but not a single word came out. At this moment, a drawn-out voice was heard. What? You beat up a disciple of my Xuanyan school, and want to leave so easily? When Xiaohua heard this, he was greatly alarmed. His legs were somewhat weak, and his figure stopped in place. He didn't know whether he should escape or not. Senior brother behind Xiaohua, the boy called out timidly, his pleasant surprise mixed with fear. Sigh, Xiaohua wailed from the bottom of his heart and turned around. Right behind the boy, a cultivator dressed in camouflage slowly walked over. That cultivator walked closer and reached out to take off the camouflage, revealing his true appearance. It was precisely that Xuanyan School's 11th level Qi refinement cultivator that Xiaohua saw outside Jingpa City. Greetings, fellow Taoist. Xiaohua didn't dare to approach and cupped his hands in salute. That cultivator ignored him and walked in front of the boy. He said coldly, Xiaomao, do you know your wrongs? Senior brother, disciple knows his wrongs. The boy named Xiaomao shrunk his neck and bowed. What wrongs? Disciple shouldn't have argued with other cultivators over a small thing. Xiaomao said in a low voice. Is that all? Xiaomao's senior brother snorted coldly and said, You've been wandering around East City these past few days, and I have been following you. Even the matter just now, I also saw it clearly. Do you think I don't know what's in your storage pouch? With a plop, Xiaomao knelt on the ground and rushed to say, Senior brother, that jade pendant. His disciples Xiaomao's senior brother interrupted him and said coldly, I don't care what that jade pendant is. Even if you gave all your spirit stones and medicinal pills to others, I still wouldn't care. I just wanted to see if you would really give the things in your storage pouch to others. At this point, Xiaomao's senior brother glanced at Xiaohua. Fortunately, your luck isn't bad. There was actually someone who helped you. Otherwise, your fate, do you know? Disciple knows. Disciple also doesn't know why, but disciple was bewitched at that time. Xiaomao didn't dare to get up and said in a low voice. It's good that you know. This time, you left the mountain to gain experience, and your results didn't pass. After returning to the mountain, I will tell your master the result. When you return today, you and the other senior brothers will first return to Xuanyan Mountain. After Xiaomao's senior brother finished speaking, he looked at Xiaohua and asked, This person is the heaven-forsaken loose cultivator you spoke of? Seeing that you didn't resist, you know him? Disciple can't be considered to know him. We just met when we entered the city. At that time, he was right in front of us. Xiaomao replied with a depressed expression. Oh. Xiaomao's senior brother was slightly surprised. He raised his eyes and said, Fellow Taoist, don't you want to take down the bewitching insect? Sigh. Hearing this, Xiaohua still sighed in his heart, and took down the bewitching insect. Oh, it's you. Xiaomao's senior brother clearly also had an impression of Xiaohua. I am Zhuoqing Yuan of Xuanyan Mountain. How should I address fellow Taoist? I am Xiaohua. Greetings, fellow Taoist Zhuo. Xiaohua cupped his hands. Xiaohua? Xiaomao? Zhuoqing Yuan asked curiously, You know Xiaomao? But what's the connection? Xiaohua shook his head. I am just a loose cultivator. How can I know a disciple of Xuanyan Mountain? It's all just a coincidence. Coincidence? Do you think I will believe that? Zhuoqing Yuan had a pensive look on his face. With your low cultivation, you actually dared to step forward bravely. If you have nothing to do with Xiaomao then, How is this possible? Sigh, I just saw a little boy like him being bullied and felt indignant in my heart. I don't have any other thoughts, Xiaohua said with a bitter smile. Could it be that you didn't see him as a disciple of Xuanyan Mountain and wanted to curry favor with Xuanyan Mountain? Or perhaps you want to obtain some benefits from Xiao Mao? Xiaohua's eyes turned and he said with a smile. If fellow Taoist Shua has such thoughts, I naturally welcome them. I wonder how fellow Taoists will thank I? What benefits does fellow Taoists want to obtain? Naturally, it's what loose cultivators want. Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and said calmly. Ha ha ha, then what's the difference between fellow Taoist and those two loose cultivators just now? Zhuo Qingyuan laughed loudly. Could it be that there aren't two people in this trap, but three? I only have one person in this trap. Where did two people come from? Three people? Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, if fellow Taoist doesn't have any techniques or the like to thank I will pretend I didn't hear it. Farewell. Finished speaking, Xiaohua turned around and prepared to leave. Unexpectedly, Zhuo Qingyuan sneered and said, how can my Xuanyan Mountain's disciple be bullied by others as they wish? Even though fellow Taoist redeemed my Xuanyan Mountain's reputation and can be considered to have saved my junior brother's life, you slapped my Xuanyan Mountain's disciple's face. Do you want to leave so easily? Yu Xiaohua stared blankly and argued. This isn't. Without waiting for him to finish speaking, Xiaohua only felt a cold wind in front of him. Without waiting for him to react, the image of a palm swatted over. Xiaohua was greatly alarmed and hurriedly dodged. However, Zhuo Qingyuan was an 11th level qi refining cultivator. Compared to Xiaohua's cultivation, Zhuo Qingyuan's was more than a star and half a drop higher. How could Xiaohua dodge in such a hurry? With a paw sound, Xiaohua did his utmost to dodge, but that palm still brushed against Xiaohua's cheek a little less than half. Your magic power seems to be higher than the 2nd level of qi refining? Zhuo Qingyuan cried out in alarm. Even though he didn't really use all of his magic power, he also didn't expect that Xiaohua could easily dodge most of his palm. Senior brother Xiao Mao finally came to his senses and knelt on the ground as he begged. As expected of a prestigious sect, as expected of benevolence, righteousness and morality, as expected of the importance of faith. Xiaohua said as expected 3 times in a row and turned around in anger. He didn't look back and hurriedly left. Fellow Taoist Xiao, catch only after Xiaohua had walked far away did Zhuo Qingyuan let out a long laugh. He waved his hand and a scarlet radiance flew in front of Xiaohua. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come and vote for it. Chapter 1330. A crimson light flew in front of Xiaohua. Zhuo Qingyuan shouted from behind him, fellow Taoist Xiao, this is I's messaging talisman. I know exactly what fellow Taoist I did. If fellow Taoist needs anything from me, please send a message to I. Xiaohua was furious. He helped them out of goodwill, yet half of his face was swept away. Hearing this, he unconsciously turned around and sneered. Fellow Taoist Zhuo, take back your goodwill. I still have the other half of my face. However, when he turned around, Zhuo Qingyuan and Xiao Mao had already disappeared. Damn it, is this great sect so stingy? Xiaohua let out a long sigh. I beat up your junior martial brother only as a temporary measure. Since you knew, why did you pretend to use the same method to return the favor? You clearly wanted to thank me, yet you said you had no other choice. What the hell is this? Looking at the flashing messaging talisman, Xiaohua reached for it and threw it into the space behind his head, thinking, this Zhuo Qingyuan is more honest than that Mingcui Mountain Shi Wuming. He really gave me a messaging talisman. If I really have something to tell him, he probably won't refuse. Who knows? Besides, if I have something to deal with, why would I look for someone else for no reason? I'll make Xuanyan School owe me a favor for the rest of my life. Xiaohua thought fiercely. Xiaohua seemed to have been provoked by Xuanyan School's Zhuo Qingyuan. He walked around randomly, buying everything he saw without hesitation. Not long after, there were more ground escape talismans, Vajra talismans, and so on in the space. He even bought some ordinary medicinal pills. As he bought more and more things, the anger in his heart gradually dissipated. using spirit stones to exchange for a happy mood. Sure enough, this was an unbreakable truth. After his anger subsided, Xiaohua no longer had the mood to wander around, e.g. After buying the necessary materials to refine the yellow talismans, he turned around and went back. As he turned around, he saw a stall to the side. On it were some medicinal pills and yellow talismans for refining pills. Xiaohua's eyes turned, and he walked up, cupping his hands and saying, "Fellow Taoist, please." The stall owner was a female cultivator around 40 years old. She had a kind look on her face, which was also the main reason why Xiaohua came here. "Fellow Taoist, do you need the medicinal pills listed above?" the female cultivator asked with a smile. "That's right." Xiaohua picked up a few cheap pills and bought them. After handing over the spirit stones, Xiaohua coughed and smiled apologetically. "I have a difficult matter that I need to ask fellow Taoist for advice." "Really? Fellow Taoist, please speak." The female cultivator seemed to be very easy to talk to and replied, "I want to know, where can I exchange for a pill furnace for alchemy?" Although Xiaohua's face was hidden in the fog, he still felt a little feverish. Pill furnace. The female cultivator was stunned. She stared vigilantly at Xiaohua for a moment, then looked left and right. "Fellow Taoist, you're a rogue cultivator, right?" "Yes, I am." "Then I advise fellow Taoist to find a sect to rely on. Only within a sect can you find pill furnaces for alchemy. Where else can you exchange for pill furnaces?" The female cultivator smiled and said, "Don't think that EG has everything. It's impossible to find the cultivation methods, pill recipes, pill furnaces, and talisman crafting methods that rogue cultivators need." "Could it be there's no room for exchange at all?" Xiaohua didn't give up and asked. Even if there's a pill furnace, think about it. People from cultivation sects, cultivation families, and Jingbo City, who wouldn't covet it? But you're just a small rogue cultivator. How can you snatch it from them? I'm not afraid of you laughing at me, but the wealth of my sect is far from what a rogue cultivator like you can compare to. The female cultivator dispelled Xiaohua's wishful thinking without any trace of politeness. "All right. Thank you for your guidance." Xiaohua cupped his hands in thanks and turned to leave. You really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." After Xiaohua walked far away, the female cultivator shook her head and muttered to herself, "Pill furnaces, how could they be so easy to obtain and use?" As expected, it seems that this matter of pill refinement still depends on luck. How could Xiaohua care about the opinions of others after he left? He had already asked fellow Taoist Liang of Mo Spirit Herb Hall a few days ago, and fellow Taoist Liang's answer was the same as this female cultivator's. However, Xiaohua's wicked heart didn't give up. He wanted to see if there was any possibility of obtaining a pill furnace at EG. In addition, he had made a certain amount of progress in refining yellow talismans, so he unconsciously placed greater hope in pill refinement. Unfortunately, reality was very cruel, and the path of pill refinement couldn't be taken for the time being. Xiaohua sighed. He didn't care about any of the stalls left and right. He found a secluded place and took down the maze amulet, then strolled out of EG. Right after Xiaohua left EG, a fourth layer or a refining cultivator hurried over from not too far away. That cultivator had an anxious expression on his face and looked very flustered. However, as soon as he saw Xiaohua, his face lit up with joy. He practically ran over to Xiaohua, cupped his hands in greeting and said anxiously, "Are you fellow Taoist Xiaohua?" Xiaohua's head was lowered as he pondered over the pill furnace. At this time, he heard someone call out his name. He was extremely astonished. When he raised his head to look, he saw a square-faced cultivator with sparse eyebrows. He wasn't familiar with this cultivator, so he couldn't help but cup his hands and say, "I am Xiaohua." "I wonder, how did fellow Taoist know me? I am Zhang Jihao." The cultivator cupped his fists and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, did you forget that when you followed fellow Taoist Qing Feng and fellow Taoist Qing to Huayan Park, it was I who brought fellow Taoist Qiao Fengyue and fellow Taoist Han Fei to Huayan Park?" When Xiaohua heard this, he repeatedly nodded and said embarrassedly, "Oh, that's right. That person is fellow Taoist Zhang. My apologies, I was thinking about something and neglected fellow Taoist Zhang." Soon after, Xiaohua glanced sideways at Yi Ji and said with a smile. Fellow Taoist Zhang also came to Yi Ji? I'm afraid you're a bit late. No. Zhang Zhihao hurriedly waved his hands and said with a smile. I came because fellow Taoist Ma Qingqing asked me to look for fellow Taoist Xiao. Ah, Senior Ma? Xiaohua was overjoyed. Needless to say, there was definitely some progress in the matter of him joining the Heaven Forsaken. He immediately asked, I wonder why Senior Ma is looking for I? But then Xiaohua asked curiously, doesn't Senior Ma have I's summoning talisman? Why don't you use it? Fellow Taoist Ma has already used the summoning talisman. However, the summoning talisman can't fly out. In this case, fellow Taoist Xiao has either left Jinghua City, or is in a place where the summoning talisman can't fly to. Zhang Zhihao patiently explained. But there are many places in Jinghua City that can block the summoning talisman. This EG is one of them. Fellow Taoist Ma guessed that fellow Taoist Xiao is most likely to come to EG, so he asked I to look for fellow Taoist Xiao. Oh, so it's like that. Xiaohua understood and nodded. Then, why is Senior Ma looking for I? This. I saw that fellow Taoist Ma and fellow Taoist Qing have a few talisman masters with them. I'm afraid it's about fellow Taoist Xiao joining the Heaven Forsaken? Fellow Taoist Ma didn't say, so I can't speak blindly. Zhang Zhihao said apologetically. Is that so? That's great. Xiaohua said with surprise. Fellow Taoist Zhang, please wait a moment. I'll send a summoning talisman to ask later. Haha, I'm afraid fellow Taoist Xiao will be disappointed. Zhang Zhihao looked at the sky and said with a smile. Fellow Taoist Ma, fellow Taoist Qing, and many other fellow Taoists have probably already left the city. Today, the important members of the Heaven Forsaken will go outside. I made an appointment with fellow Taoist Ma. If I can't find fellow Taoist Xiao, fellow Taoist Ma, and the others won't wait outside the city. The next time they come back will probably be a month later. Ah, a month? Xiaohua was a little anxious and hurriedly said, Then, I'll have to ask fellow Taoist Zhang to lead the way. Let's go quickly. Don't let Senior Ma and Senior Qing wait too long. Zhang Zhihao nodded and said, I have the same intention. As he spoke, he led the way out of Jinghua City. Xiaohua followed closely, but he was a little uneasy in his heart. These days he had been refining fireball talismans and confinement talismans. However, he used his unique technique. Although he also practiced drawing fireball talismans with a talisman brush, but he didn't make much progress. Now that he had to pass Heaven Forsaken's test, he was a little regretful that he shouldn't have spent more time on fireball talismans. What should I do? Xiaohua frowned and followed Zhang Zhihao with his head lowered. He was worried as he walked. Walking out of Jinghua City from EG wasn't through the city gate that Xiaohua used to enter the city. After Zhang Zhihao took Xiaohua out of Jinghua City, he used a flight talisman to take Xiaohua in another direction. Xiaohua didn't dare to reveal his flying speed and slowly followed behind Zhang Zhihao. Zhang Zhihao also didn't panic. He flew with Xiaohua's speed for the time it took to eat a meal. Seeing that the sun was about to set, he landed. Xiaohua looked around. It was all dead wood and brambles. He didn't see anyone. He was a little surprised and asked, Fellow Taoist Zhang, how come? I don't see Senior Qing and the others? Yeah, I'm also puzzled. This is the place we agreed on. It's not yet time. They shouldn't have left. Zhang Zhihao looked around and was also puzzled. He thought for a moment and said, Fellow Taoist Xiao, please wait a moment. In a moment, I will send a message talisman to ask. As he spoke, Zhang Zhihao patted his storage bag and took out a scarlet-yellow talisman. I'll have to trouble fellow Taoist Zhang. Xiaohua cupped his hands and smiled. Then he looked around. This was a desolate mountain valley. Brambles covered the ground. Most of the nearby trees were withered. The branches that slanted upward slightly swayed in the twilight sky. Xiaohua felt it was a little strange. Senior Qing really knows how to pick a place. Apart from falling from the sky, no one would suddenly. Xiaohua's heart jumped. A thought suddenly popped into his mind. This kind of place is very dangerous. Isn't it a good place to kill and steal? When Xiaohua thought of this, a trace of cold sweat immediately appeared on his back. He hurriedly wanted to turn around. Unfortunately, he was still too late. Right next to Xiaohua, Zhang Jihao's right hand was holding a scarlet message talisman. His left hand had already patted the scarlet message talisman the moment Xiaohua turned around. A confinement talisman flew out. Magic power flowed out, and the confinement talisman emitted a faint brilliance. It rushed towards Xiaohua, who was just about to turn around. Chapter 1331. Xiaohua was startled, and just as he was about to turn around, the confinement talisman had already fallen. A thin brilliance emerged from Xiaohua's body, confining Xiaohua's four limbs. Xiaohua's four limbs exerted all their strength to twist, but he was unable to break free. What are you doing?" Xiaohua blurted out in shock. "Ha ha ha!" Seeing this, Zhang Jihao clapped his hands and laughed. "What a good middle-grade confinement talisman. This effect is simply not inferior to a high-grade confinement talisman. I didn't expect fellow Taoist Xiao to have such a good method. If I wasn't in a hurry, I would really want to know where fellow Taoists got so many middle-grade confinement talismans." Soon after, Zhang Jihao took a step forward and took away Xiaohua's storage pouch. He sneered. "I already confined you. What do you think I want to do? Isn't that really childish?" When he opened the storage pouch and saw a pile of yellow talismans and a pile of spirit stones, his eyes unconsciously lit up, and he laughed again. "You brat, you really know how to get rich. I don't know where you got these fireball talismans and confinement talismans, but you actually earned so many spirit stones. What a pity, you have spirit stones but don't have the life to spend them, so you benefited I for nothing." While speaking, Zhang Jihao took out his own storage pouch to transfer the spirit stones and other items. Xiaohua had already recovered his calm at this time. His eyes coldly looked at Zhang Jihao, but his arms slightly exerted force. He already had the experience of breaking through with force before, and he also broke free from this confinement talisman. However, the confinement talisman last time was obviously a low-grade one, far less powerful than today's confinement talisman. Sigh, this confinement talisman. Listening to Zhang Jihao's words, I refined it myself. I'm the one who's trapped myself in a cocoon. Xiaohua secretly complained, his arms still slowly increasing the force. The number of spirit stones is wrong? After Zhang Jihao took all the spirit stones from Xiaohua's storage pouch, he was slightly dazed. He raised his head and said, "Didn't you sell more than 200 confinement talismans at the stall just now? How come there are only so few spirit stones? Also, I followed you for a few days and saw you harvest a lot of spirit stones every day. Where did you put them? Could it be that you put them in an inn? You're quite cautious." As he spoke, Zhang Jihao searched his storage bag again. Not long after, he found a yellow talisman. He sneered and said, "The inn you're staying in is actually better than the one I'm staying in. Oh right, fellow Taoist Xiao, do you want to live? Do you want to live to die? Or do you want to be burned to ashes by my fire talisman?" As he spoke, Zhang Jihao took out a fireball talisman from Xiaohua's storage pouch. Urging his magic power, a small fireball was born in his hand. "You to let to die to Xiao to die? Aren't you afraid that I'll tell fellow Taoist Qing? To s what is I to die to die?" Zhang Jihao said with a smile. "Heaven forsaken doesn't stop fighting. Even if fellow Taoist Qing knows that I killed you, he has nothing to say. To this to die, to Taoist Xiao to Xiao. What if this poor Taoist wants to live?" How could Xiaohua believe Zhang Jihao's words? He asked with contempt. "You to say. To tell I how you got these fire talismans and confinement talismans. Maybe I can consider it." Zhang Jihao said with a smile. "I followed you for many days and only saw you between the inn and EG. I didn't see you go anywhere else. The origin of these yellow talismans is so hard to understand. Could it be that you've been keeping them in your storage pouch for a long time? I'm afraid you won't be able to figure out the origin of these two talismans." Xiaohua sneered. "Ha ha ha, you want to threaten I with this?" Zhang Jihao looked at Xiaohua with extreme contempt and threw the fireball over. It spun on top of Xiaohua's head. "If you are tactful, tell me the origin of this yellow talisman, and give this poor Taoist a way to make money." This poor Taoist might be soft-hearted and let you go. If you want to use this to threaten this poor Taoist. These fire talismans and confinement talismans were made by I myself. Xiaohua took a deep breath and channeled all the strength in his body to his arms. His tone was still calm as he said, "Ha ha ha ha." Zhang Zhihao laughed out loud, as if he'd heard the funniest thing in the world. He bent over, one of his hands slightly raised, pointing at Xiaohua. Out of breath, he said, You're only at the second layer of qi refining? You actually refined a high-grade fireball talisman? You think you're Mo Sang Mountain's Mo Sang Elder?" Seeing this, Xiaohua knew he had a chance. Thus he raised his arms and shouted, "That's right!" This sound almost deafened Zhang Zhihao's ears, and Xiaohua's entire body's strength was also exerted through his two arms along with this loud shout. Xiaohua's upper body, along with the forceful lifting of his two arms, a burst of brilliance flashed. Rip! A crisp sound like tearing silk rang out. The upper body imprisonment talisman was actually torn apart by Xiaohua's two arms, and along with the flickering brilliance of his upper body, the brilliance of Xiaohua's entire body also flickered a few times before completely disappearing. The entire imprisonment talisman was broken apart by force. Zhang Zhihao bent over, as if he still hadn't recovered from his laughter. However, when he saw Xiaohua actually break the confinement talisman in a short moment, the smile on his face froze. He only cried out a single word before immediately coming to his senses. Before he could straighten his body, he moved his finger and channeled his magic power. The fireball flying in the air flew toward Xiaohua's head. The fireball broke free from Zhang Zhihao's control and suddenly enlarged, sucking in all the surrounding spiritual energy. Xiaohua broke free from the confinement, and his heart was very calm. Seeing the fireball rapidly flying over, his complexion changed greatly. He had seen the power of his high-grade fireball talisman in the yellow talisman shop. If he was hit by this fireball, wouldn't he immediately turn into ashes? In a hurry, he didn't care about anything else. He used his hand to brush the side of his ear, and took out an icicle talisman from his space. He channeled his magic power and a blue brilliance also met the fireball. Within the brilliance was a long ice spike condensed from spiritual energy. Sizzle! Like snow water being poured into a pot of oil, the ice spike pierced into the fireball. As the ice spike melted, it let out an ear-piercing sound. The sound became increasingly urgent, and the fireball also gradually shrunk. However, that icicle talisman was refined by someone else and couldn't compare to Xiaohua's fireball talisman. When the ice spike on the icicle talisman was exhausted, the fireball was still not small. Boom! A loud sound rang out. The fireball fell on the ground and blew up a rather large hole in the ground. Zhang Zhihao was clearly shocked by the might of this fireball talisman, and was somewhat dazed. Xiaohua was just the opposite. After he sent out the icicle talisman, he didn't pause in the slightest. He channeled his magic power, and took advantage of the fact that the flight talisman still hadn't lost its effect to quickly fly in front of Zhang Zhihao. Zhang Zhihao threw out the fireball, and had already straightened up. At this moment, his face was filled with astonishment. He had just woken up from the enormous might of the fireball talisman, and didn't have time to think about how Xiaohua broke free from the confinement talisman. He also didn't have time to think about where Xiaohua took out the icicle talisman. He also didn't have time to think about why Xiaohua inexplicably rushed over. Xiaohua had already rushed to a distance of 3 feet in front of him. "You're courting death." Zhang Zhihao threw all of his astonishment to the side. He slapped his hand and took out another fireball talisman. He channeled his magic power and blocked in front of Xiaohua. Xiaohua was helpless. How could he still dare to touch this kind of fireball talisman that he refined himself? His figure hastily flashed to the side, wanting to dodge. But no matter how fast he flew, it couldn't compare to the channeling of magic power. Zhang Zhihao grinned nastily. That fireball followed like a shadow and flew in front of Xiaohua's face. Xiaohua thought for a moment. He brushed his hand and took out 2 yellow talismans from the space. One was the icicle talisman, which he stabbed towards the fireball talisman. The other was the weak water talisman. He channeled his magic power, and stuck it on his head. A water blue brilliance flashed and covered Xiaohua's entire body. Looking at Zhang Zhihao again, he wasn't the slightest bit slower than Xiaohua. After the fireball talisman was thrown out, he similarly slapped his storage pouch, and a yellow talisman also landed on his body. A yellow light flashed. It was an iron cloak talisman, wrapping Zhang Zhihao's entire body. I would like to see just how many yellow talismans you have. Zhang Zhihao's body floated into the air. He sneered and waved his hand again. A yellow talisman shot out. That yellow talisman first burned like the fireball talisman. A dark red flame blocked in front of Xiaohua. Without waiting for Xiaohua to take out the icicle talisman, that flame exploded with a bang and sealed the space around Xiaohua's body. It was like a sea of fire had covered Xiaohua. Humph, little thing. You actually wasted one of I's high-level fire net talismans. Zhang Zhihao looked at the sea of fire that lingered in front of him. There was a trace of reluctance in his eyes. He couldn't clearly see Xiaohua's figure in the light of the fire, but Zhang Zhihao absolutely believed that with Xiaohua's second-level refinement magic power, he absolutely wouldn't be able to dodge this fire net. That's right, this guy keeps moving in front of me. What's he doing? Could it be that he wants to snatch away the storage bag in my hands? Zhang Zhihao's eyes flashed with a fiery light. He was somewhat bewildered. Just when Zhang Zhihao was puzzled, he suddenly felt a trace of wind behind him. He immediately had a startled realization in his heart. Someone wants to be the Oriole. After a startled realization, Zhang Zhihao didn't dare to be negligent. He also didn't turn his head. He slapped his storage bag and at the same time threw out the fireball talisman. His figure also turned and dodged to the side. Right behind Zhang Zhihao, two fireballs collided together, letting out an incomparably loud rumbling sound. Zhang Zhihao turned around as he flew. Before he could finish speaking, a cold voice rang out extremely close behind him. Nonsense, besides I, who else could it be? Xiaohua? Zhang Zhihao heard and his eyes opened wide. How did you run behind me? What answered him wasn't Xiaohua's voice. Instead, it was an incomparably enormous force that smashed into the back of Zhang Zhihao's neck. Bang! A loud sound rang out. Zhang Zhihao felt a burst of dizziness and his vision blurred. His figure practically flipped in the air. At the same time, the brilliance of the iron cloak talisman on his body flickered. It looked like it was about to collapse. Body Cultivator. Zhang Zhihao shouted loudly. His figure barely stabilized. He slapped his storage bag and shot out another iron cloak talisman. At the same time, his other hand wasn't slow either. He brought out another fire net talisman and threw it behind him. Chapter 1332. Hee fellow Taoist Zhang, can you hit I? Xiaohua's voice sounded behind Zhang Zhihao, but when Zhang Zhihao's fire net found Xiaohua's voice quickly turned to Zhang Zhihao's other side. It was faster than Zhang Zhihao expected. So fast. Zhang Zhihao was shocked. His mind moved quickly, and his magic power spread out. That fire net flew toward Xiaohua's voice. But just as the fire net was released, a black shadow flew at extreme speed from Zhang Zhihao's side. It was as fast as an arrow. Zhang Zhihao's heart jumped. He couldn't care about the fire net. He urged his flying talisman to dodge, but that huge force came again like a mountain. This time, Zhang Zhihao saw it clearly. The origin of that force was actually Xiaohua's fist. He finally understood why Xiaohua wanted to fly in front of him from the beginning, and not compete with yellow talismans like other cultivators. Pa! There was another muffled sound. Xiaohua's fist hit Zhang Zhihao's armpit without hesitation. Although the majority of the strength of the fist was blocked by the iron cloak talisman, a faint force was transmitted to Zhang Zhihao's body. Zhang Zhihao's qi and blood were tumbling, and the mana in his body was in chaos. In particular, the brilliance of the iron cloak talisman began to flicker, and it was about to collapse. What level of body cultivator is this guy? He actually hit it so deeply. Zhang Zhihao only had time to be secretly shocked in his heart. Before he could say anything, his two hands were the same as before. One hand took out an iron cloak talisman, and the other hand shot out a fireball talisman. Only this time the fireball talisman didn't go far. It swayed around his body, waiting for Xiaohua to attack. Xiaohua's flying speed was indeed fast, But it wasn't as fast as Zhang Jihao's vision. Just as he threw out his fist, he saw the fireball flying towards him. Xiao Hua didn't dare to resist and could only dodge. Zhang Jihao also learned to be shrewd. He flew up and pulled apart the distance between him and Xiao Hua. He tried his best to avoid letting Xiao Hua get close to him. At the same time, he wasn't in a hurry to use the fireball talisman. He used it as a defensive measure, blocking between himself and Xiao Hua. Seeing this, Xiao Hua was helpless. This was exactly what he had told Xiao Yuehong before. Although his method of using force to break the spell was unexpected, if he didn't succeed in one strike and others found out, then he would completely lose the initiative. No one would foolishly stand there and wait for Xiao Hua to attack. Not to mention the twin blue bears from before, but this Zhang Jihao only had a cultivation of the 4th layer of the Qi refining realm. His flying speed wasn't as fast as Xiao Hua's. With just the Iron Cloak Talisman and Fireball Talisman, Xiao Hua was unable to take his life. The most hateful thing was that Zhang Jihao actually took the Fireball Talisman refined by Xiao Hua. The might of that Fireball Talisman was truly terrifying. Xiao Hua didn't feel it before, but once he encountered a fight, he immediately discovered the benefits of this high-grade Fireball Talisman. And this kind of situation was precisely what Xiao Hua was most worried about. Admittedly, his life was no longer in danger, and he could use the flying talisman to escape at any time, but some of his secrets were exposed in front of Zhang Jihao. Not to mention whether or not Zhang Jihao suspected the origin of the 2 icicle talismans just now. The secret of using force to break the spell and flying speed absolutely couldn't be leaked. He absolutely believed that as long as Zhang Jihao escaped today, he would definitely gather some loose cultivators from Heaven Forsaken to find trouble with him. Not to mention his situation after joining Heaven Forsaken. Even if the twin blue bears and the others knew about this matter, they would definitely contact him. Heaven Forsaken didn't refrain from fighting and also respected talisman masters, but under the covetous eyes of others, how could he peacefully cultivate? Since Zhang Jihao dared to make a move against this young master absolutely has no reason to spare his life. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes, his figure floating in the air, coldly looking at Zhang Jihao. At this time, Zhang Jihao felt that he had a countermeasure and gradually calmed down, but the expression on his face was uncertain, unknown as to what he was thinking. But this Iron Cloak Talisman, this young master's fist can't break it. I'm afraid it will have to be the same as before, hitting the same point multiple times. Xiao Hua thought, slapping his hand. Another flying talisman hit his body. Fellow Taoist Xiao, seeing this, Zhang Jihao hurriedly called out. Everything is a misunderstanding. Xiao Hua sneered, his figure spread out, flying towards Zhang Jihao at extreme speed. Zhang Jihao hurriedly urged his magic power, controlling the fireball to block in front of Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua changed his direction, swayed a few times, and spent another 2 icicle talismans to get close to Zhang Jihao's side. This time, Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his fist, hitting Zhang Jihao's back twice in a row, almost breaking the Iron Cloak Talisman again. Unfortunately, at this time, Zhang Jihao's Iron Cloak Talisman and Fireball Talisman flew out again, blocking Xiao Hua's fist. Alas, what a pity! If only I had a confinement talisman. Xiao Hua was somewhat regretful. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have sold the confinement talisman. But then he smiled bitterly. Confinement talismans are useful, but Zhang Jihao isn't just standing there, it's very difficult to hit him. If the confinement talisman can imprison Zhang Jihao, what's the use of force to break through? Wouldn't a fireball talisman be enough? If only I had a little more strength. Xiao Hua secretly sighed. Thinking of this, Xiao Hua was slightly surprised, seeming to have thought of something. However, at this time, Zhang Jihao opposite Xiao Hua was already aware that something was wrong. Under Xiao Hua's fast flight, he could only parry without the power to fight back. At this time, he still had a lot of Iron Cloak talismans, and even more Fireball talismans, but if he purely defended, his Iron Cloak talismans would run out sooner or later. Without this Iron Cloak talisman, he didn't doubt that as long as Xiao Hua's unparalleled strength touched his body, he would only have one outcome: to be beaten into a pile of meat paste. As for the Fireball talisman, although its power is great, it's also very easy to dodge, unless it's sprinkled in large quantities. But if it's sprinkled in large quantities, with Zhang Jihao's cultivation base, he wouldn't be able to control it very well. In addition to Xiaohua's fast flight, Zhang Jihao didn't have the confidence to hit Xiaohua. Very naturally, Zhang Jihao's heart beat a retreat. Zhang Jihao's heart retreated. He also shot out a flying talisman. His figure rapidly retreated, flying in the direction of Jingbua City. Where do you think you're going? Xiaohua was very anxious. He shouted. His figure didn't hesitate. In a few breaths' time, he chased after him, blocking Zhang Jihao's path. Zhang Jihao didn't answer. He clapped his hands. A yellow talisman shot out, and sneered. Although fellow Daoist Xiao has the means, if I want to leave, can you stop me? That yellow talisman was a fireball again. Xiaohua was helpless. He still dodged, and Zhang Jihao also slightly dodged, fleeing into the distance again. Xiaohua shot down the fireball and chased after him again. The two were entangled for a moment. Xiaohua once again found an opportunity to hit Zhang Jihao. Just like before, he used the Iron Cloak talisman again. He still saved his life. Therefore the two people, one chased and one fled, flew for a while. Xiaohua still didn't have a way to kill the enemy. He couldn't help but feel anxious. Zhang Jihao, on the other hand, became more and more relaxed. When he saw Xiaohua's fist strike again, he sneered, and shot out a yellow talisman. Brat, you're going too far. If I don't show my power, you think I'm a sick cat? That yellow talisman flew in the air. It immediately turned into a long sword, directly piercing Xiaohua's fist. Seeing the flying sword talisman, the long sword formed by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth flashed across Xiaohua's mind like lightning. Immediately, Xiaohua woke up, grasping what he was thinking just now. Seeing the sharp sword piercing towards him, Xiaohua hurriedly dodged, but this flying sword wasn't as sharp as the fireball. The sword tip was sharp, and its speed was incomparable. Zhang Jihao suddenly threw it out, with the intention of catching Xiaohua off guard. Xiaohua could only barely dodge the fist. That flying sword slanted and pierced Xiaohua's shoulder. The weak water talisman's brilliance flashed under the flying sword. It only lasted for a moment before it was pierced. Xiaohua's figure hurriedly moved, dodging to the side, the flying sword following behind him like a shadow. Ha ha ha! Seeing this, Zhang Jihao's figure laughed loudly in the air. Taking advantage of Xiaohua's weak water talisman again, his fire net talisman also blocked in front of Xiaohua. At the same time, several fireball talismans were also thrown out by Zhang Jihao with heartache, and Zhang Jihao himself immediately flew into the distance, as if he didn't want to see the results of the fire net talisman and fireball talisman. Bang! 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 A burst of sounds rang out, all of them exploding under the fire net. Xiaohua was in a sea of fire. Just at this moment, a gust of wind blew. Just as Zhang Jihao had flown a distance of about 1 zhang, Xiaohua's figure actually flew out from the sea of fire under his feet. Xiaohua's entire body was covered in flames, his face had some charred marks, and behind him was a flying sword. Seeing Xiaohua actually directly fly out from the sea of fire and attack with his fist at close range, Zhang Jihao was suddenly startled. But in his heart, he didn't take it seriously. Both of his hands moved, patting his storage bag, taking out an iron cloak talisman and a fireball talisman each. Only in Zhang Jihao's eyes, the fist that Xiaohua struck towards his lower abdomen seemed to be different from before. Faintly, it seemed to be holding a pitch-black thing. What is this? Zhang Jihao only had time to turn this thought before the thing in Xiaohua's hand pierced his lower abdomen. Bang! A force much stronger than before struck Zhang Jihao. The iron cloak talisman on Zhang Jihao's body flashed brilliantly, and was pierced by the sharp object in Xiaohua's hand almost without any resistance. A violent stinging pain came from Zhang Jihao's abdomen. Zhang Jihao's face was filled with disbelief, his eyeballs almost popping out. The iron cloak talisman in his right hand was still in midair, and the fireball talisman in his left hand had already turned into a fireball, but he forgot to hit the fleeing Xiaohua. Xiaohua's attack succeeded. Seeing Zhang Jihao take out the fireball talisman, he immediately let go of the spear in his hand and flew back to the distance. His face was pale as he looked at Zhang Jihao. His eyes didn't even blink, appearing extremely nervous. He actually didn't even bother to extinguish the flames burning around his body. This Zhang Zihao's figure stopped in midair, and he lowered his head to look at his abdomen. The devil's spear head was deeply pierced, and trickles of blood flowed out continuously like a stream, gradually submerging the devil's spear head. Zhang Zihao clenched his teeth and threw away the fireball. He patted his storage bag with his hand, wanting to take out the pills. The sharp spear head in the blood flashed with a strange black light. That black light followed the blood flowing out and flew into Zhang Zihao's heart meridian. With just a light twirl, the true blood in the heart meridian was sucked into the spear head. Chapter 1333. As for Zhang Zihao, his vision went black, and he directly fell from the sky into the dust. He didn't have the slightest aura. Seeing Zhang Zihao fall from the sky, Xiaohua didn't dare to go forward. He didn't know what was going on with Zhang Zihao. After all, he wanted to use the devil's spear tip and his own strength to break Zhang Zihao's confinement talisman. But he didn't expect the devil's spear tip to directly pierce through the confinement talisman and pierce into Zhang Zihao's abdomen. The confinement talisman on Zhang Zihao's body hadn't completely collapsed yet, and he was afraid of Zhang Zihao's fireball talisman, so he could only run away. As for the devil's spear tip's power, he didn't know. His intuition told him that the spear tip that pierced into Zhang Zihao's abdomen could only injure him. It couldn't take his life. So when he saw Zhang Zihao fall into the dust, he only thought it was Zhang Zihao's strategy to lure the enemy. Ouch! Just when Xiaohua was hesitating, pain came from his body. The flames of the fire net talisman and fireball talisman had already broken the weak water talisman on his body and directly burned his body. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He brushed the back of his head and shot out 2 more weak water talismans. Only then did all the flames extinguish. But in this moment, his Taoist robe was already burned to tatters. Alas, this fire net talisman is indeed a high-grade yellow talisman. Amazing! Xiaohua stopped far away in the air and sighed with emotion. Also, my fireball talisman can actually be thrown out in large quantities. Why didn't I think of that? It made me dodge for a while. If I really ran into one, I wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. Xiaohua sighed with emotion, but his eyes stared at Zhang Zihao's body on the ground, thinking about how to deal with it. In a moment, Xiaohua's brows relaxed and he thought, I'm too nervous. Whether this guy is faking it or not, won't I know with a fireball talisman? Thinking of this, he flicked his hand, and a fireball talisman appeared. He urged his magic power, and it turned into a fireball that flew toward Zhang Zihao's body. Xiaohua had made a lot of preparations and backups, but the fireball directly hit Zhang Zihao's body, which was still beyond his expectations. Seeing Zhang Zihao's body being burned to ashes by the fireball, Xiaohua truly believed that a 4th-level qi refining cultivator had been killed by him. At this time, Xiaohua didn't dare delay. He directly flew to the ground and picked up the devil's spear tip. Looking at it, there wasn't any change. He waved his hand and put it into the space behind his head. Then he tied his storage pouch that on his waist. As Zhang's pouch, Xiaohua's storage pouch for I. Xiao S for I for it. Its have its a hundreds. I, SSS what's I? S halves for it. I have. It. Have. S dight. S of it. S's. I it. It. Thinking this, Xiaohua didn't have time to look carefully at the contents of the storage pouch. He moved everything into the space behind his head. Then he casually tossed the storage pouch aside. Using his transcendence energy, he activated a flight talisman and flew towards Jingbua City at top speed. Zhang Zihao was originally fleeing towards Jingbua City, so Xiaohua was also going in the same direction. In the time it took to eat a meal, he saw the city's shadow. The city's innumerable lights were reflected in the countless lakes, making them appear like specks of starlight. They were like the stars in the sky. The starlight in this lake seems a bit mysterious. Xiaohua couldn't help but frown. However, he didn't have time to carefully examine it. He lowered his altitude and at the same time slowed down. Everything about his flight matched that of a 2nd-level qi refining cultivator. At the same time, he took out his concealment cloak and put it on. At this time, many people were coming out of Jinghua City. Very few people were going in. When they saw Xiaohua, they couldn't help but give him a second glance. Fortunately, Xiaohua was wearing a concealment cloak. His face couldn't be seen, so he wasn't afraid of leaking anything to 100 Herb's Gate. When he arrived at the entrance of Jinghua City, Xiaohua was just about to step into the light curtain when a low, hoarse voice shouted, "Fellow Taoist, stop immediately!" After. A distorted figure appeared in the light curtain, blocking Xiaohua's path. Xiaohua was stunned. Not good. Could it be that the city gates are already closed? Sure enough, the Jinghua City disciple said, "Jinghua City closes its gates. No outsiders are allowed to enter. Fellow Taoist, please turn back." This Xiaohua turned his head and looked at the many cultivators coming out of Jinghua City. Each of them was at the 4th level of qi refining or higher. They all seemed to be as honeyed as Zhang Jihao. Xiaohua couldn't help but feel anxious. "Senior, this junior's cultivation is too low. I'm afraid there will be some trouble tonight. Senior, please give me a way out. This is the iron law of Jinghua City. How could I dare to ignore it? If fellow Taoist doesn't have a proof of Jinghua City, then hurry up and go. While there are still many cultivators, find a few familiar and reliable ones. Proof of Jinghua City." Xiaohua was delighted. He patted his storage pouch and took out the In's yellow talisman. He handed it over and said, Is this a yellow talisman?" A divine sense came from the light curtain and swept over Xiaohua's yellow talisman. The Foundation Establishment disciple said, "This is the proof of Jinghua City. Why didn't fellow Taoist take it out earlier?" Reporting to senior, this junior really didn't know. "Please forgive me." Xiaohua's face lit up with joy. Seeing the Jinghua City disciple's figure disappear, Xiaohua hurriedly rushed into the light curtain, leaving behind a thin figure on the light curtain. When Xiaohua's figure landed on the main street of Jinghua City, Xiaohua's restless heart finally calmed down. He had a feeling of surviving a calamity. Immediately, Xiaohua clasped his hands behind his back and walked unhurriedly along the main street towards the inn. As he walked, he thought about the process of killing Zhang Jihao just now. After all, this was the first opponent Xiaohua killed on the Xiaoyu continent. It was also the first time he had confidence in himself. This Zhang Jihao is a 4th-level qi refinement expert. Whether it is his control of magic power, the use of yellow talismans, or his fighting experience, they are all far beyond this young master's reach. Being able to kill this bastard today is really a fluke. If it wasn't for that spear-tipped devil weapon, this young master absolutely wouldn't have been able to kill him. Alas, it really is as this young master expected. Although this young master's flight is swift, it still can't avoid the yellow talisman's speed. This young master's strength is invincible, but it still can't destroy the yellow talisman with one punch. If this young master's strength was a little stronger, then using force to break the spell wouldn't be empty words. But now, I still have to rely on this spear tip. Speaking of which, I'm afraid this spear tip is also strange. Even if an ordinary spear tip pierced into Zhang Jihao's abdomen, it would only cause some skin damage. A Wucheng pill should be able to heal it completely, not to mention taking his life. That's simply a fool's dream. Only what's so strange about this spear tip? Could it be because it's a devil weapon? But if all devil weapons have this kind of magical use, why is it that Shi Wuming's devil weapon, no cultivator bought it? Although a piece of top-grade spirit stone is very expensive, who would complain about this killing weapon being expensive? This young master is really muddle-headed. Xiaohua suddenly slapped his forehead. Although devil weapons have this kind of life-threatening use, but if it can't pierce into a cultivator's flesh, then isn't it the same as not having any use? Normally, cultivators would have defensive yellow talismans all over their bodies. Even some Taoist robes had defensive properties that could block demonic artifacts. I'm afraid only this young master's arms have great strength, plus the weight of this spear tip itself, as well as the sharpness of the spear tip, can easily pierce through the defensive yellow talisman's brilliance. The more Xiaohua thought about it, the more he felt that it was reasonable. The more he thought about it, the more excited he felt. If that was really the case, then this would be Xiaohua's one and only secret technique, the one and only way to break the spell using force. It would also be Xiaohua's ultimate move to save his life. Only, this kind of technique still requires one to get close to the enemy. Xiaohua immediately frowned. The cultivators of the country of Xi, who would let the enemy get close to them? I'm afraid that when they just started to attack, the yellow talismans would be like a storm raining down on them, right? That's right, speaking of raining down on them, I actually forgot about the fireball talismans. I thought that I could only use them one by one. I didn't expect that I could actually use them all at once. The might of a single fireball talisman is already so great, so a whole bunch of fireball talismans would be even more powerful. I didn't know that I actually sold so many fireball talismans. No wonder those cultivators were so affectionate when they saw me. They didn't bargain at all when they put away the fireball talismans. It turns out that there was a hidden meaning behind it. The next time I see someone who is impatient, I'll directly throw a bunch of fireball talismans at them. Wouldn't the whole world be peaceful then? And it's not very good. If the enemy's speed is extremely fast, it can't be done. Didn't that guy Zhang Jihao think that I was flying too fast, so he couldn't hit me with the fireball talismans? And from this, increasing my flying speed is also my life-saving technique. Only by increasing my flying speed and catching the enemy off guard can I use this trump card. But how can I increase my flying speed? Xiaohua thought again. Escape of light. If I have the speed of light, who can be this young master's opponent? The speed of light. How fast is that? What kind of realm is that? Thinking too much, Xiaohua unconsciously became infatuated. He raised his head and looked at the sparkling starlight. It seemed that within the starlight, there was a Xiaohua who was using escape of light. After returning to the inn, Xiaohua's excitement from killing a high-level cultivator had already calmed down. He no longer had the excitement he had before entering Jinghua City. After this excitement, he reflected. After this first life and death battle, Xiaohua deeply felt that the cultivation world of this Donrain continent was really abnormally cruel. There was no reasoning at all. Everything depended on one's own strength and methods. He had only met this rogue cultivator named Zhang Jihao once. He didn't know how he was targeted. He was very careful, but some of his whereabouts were still discovered. It seemed that he still had to be more cautious in the future. Moreover, even if he succeeded in killing Zhang Jihao, he didn't use absolute strength after all. He only relied on some unexpected methods. These methods might be useful for a short period of time, but if he failed and others found out, he would definitely die without a burial ground. Chapter 1334. Perhaps, only by raising my cultivation and killing Zhang Jihao openly with my 5th level qi refining cultivation, can I be considered a true success? Xiaohua bit his lips, his eyes almost narrowed. For a moment, there was an unparalleled thirst for strength in his heart. One can't travel 1,000 miles without taking a few steps. My cultivation growth is slow, but it's still growth. As long as I work hard, there will be a day when I succeed. The only thing I can do now is to focus on cultivation and raise my magic power. Xiaohua made up his mind and sat cross-legged. For several days, if he wasn't meditating and comprehending the heavens, he was cultivating the Songhua Dark Heart technique, and he was refining fireball talismans and confinement talismans. Along with the gradual increase of his magic power, and the gradual increase of his experience in refining yellow talismans, Xiaohua's drawing of fireball talismans with a talisman brush actually made a breakthrough. He could already draw fireball talismans with great difficulty. Looking at the freshly made fireball talismans, Xiaohua felt awkward in his heart. Not to mention anything else, just looking at the uneven lines on the yellow talisman and the slightly twisted runes, they all clearly indicated that this fireball talisman was nothing more than a ruffian for practice. But it just so happened that the power of this fireball talisman was not at the elementary level. With Xiaohua's experience in refining high-grade fireball talismans, he could easily determine that this seemingly crooked fireball talisman was most likely a mid-grade one. Xiaohua pondered, but to no avail. He could only attribute this peculiar phenomenon to his own fire attribute constitution. On this day, Xiaohua refined a fireball talisman. His heart stirred and he thought to himself. After cultivating for several days, Today should be the day of Jingbua City's change of market. Many sects in the country of Xi will come to Jingbua City to exchange what they have. Rare spiritual herbs, rare materials, they will all appear. Maybe I can even come across some cultivation methods? And not to mention cultivation methods, even some pill formulas or talisman refining methods might be possible. If I don't go take a look, wouldn't it be a pity? Xiaohua already knew how to refine fireball talismans. Entering Heaven's Forsaken was already a foregone conclusion. Xiaohua's consciousness entered his space and sorted out the yellow talismans he refined in the past few days. After the matter with Zhang Jihao last time, Xiaohua put everything inside his space. He only put some simple things in his storage pouch that matched his second layer aura refining cultivation. I forgot that the last time I killed Zhang Jihao, I also took some things from his storage bag. I wonder what they are. Thinking of this, Xiaohua began to tidy up Zhang Jihao's things. On that day, Xiaohua moved all the things in Zhang Jihao's storage bag into his own space, but most of these things were Xiaohua's own, so he was too lazy to look carefully. He only scolded the poor bastard in his heart, and sighed at Zhang Jihao's difficulties as a robber. Zhang Jihao indeed didn't have many things. He only had a few dozen mid-grade spirit stones, some yellow talismans, some booklets, a few robes, and some other personal belongings. I forgot. This guy is a 4th level Qi refining cultivator. Maybe he has a cultivation method. Xiaohua suddenly remembered. He seemed to have a bit of an afterthought. It was obvious that he didn't have any experience in robbing. Icicle talisman? Xiaohua took out the first book and looked at it carefully. He couldn't help but be somewhat disappointed. This guy doesn't know how to refine talismans at all. Where did he get the icicle talisman? He must have stolen it from somewhere. If it was before, Xiaohua would definitely be very happy to get the icicle talisman. But now that he was looking forward to a cultivation method, although he was happy, he was also very disappointed. Following that, the next few books were either travel notes or incomplete pieces of silk. In the end, there was even a secret manual for dual cultivation. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he saw it, but he was even more disappointed. Sure enough, he's a poor bastard. Not only do he have no spirit stones, he didn't even leave a cultivation method in his storage bag. Really, I don't know what to say about you. Can't you have a bit of the awareness of a rogue cultivator? Why did you carry everything with you? Xiaohua cursed in his heart, and threw the things back into the space. Xiaohua was a bit uninterested in Zhang Jihao's Taoist robe. He only wanted to take a look, but when he saw one of the rooms, his eyes widened. This is a maze? Are you a real fan? In Xiaohua's hands, among the robes he took out from the space, there was one that was exactly the same as the one he saw. It was actually a genuine item from Qiqiao sect. Xiaohua's mood suddenly became excited. He couldn't help but nag. Like I said, this guy must have robbed a lot. How could he not have anything good? Presumably, all his spirit stones and spiritual herbs were converted into top-grade spirit stones to exchange for this maze. Humph, there's no need to think about it. This guy was wearing this maze and following behind me, making me unable to detect him. This is great. Even death can't wipe out his crimes. And he even tried to steal a chicken, but ended up losing the rice used to lure it. He's benefiting me for nothing. And, what's the old saying again? If you always walk by the river, how can your shoes not get wet? Xiaohua hummed an unknown tune as he put the maze into the space, thinking of using it himself in the future. Looking at the other robes, they were all ordinary. Xiaohua didn't have the habit of wearing other people's robes. He threw out the fireball talisman he just refined and set the robes on fire. Although the fireball talisman Xiaohua drew with a talisman pen looked terrible, its power was not bad. Although Xiaohua had already controlled his magic power, and there wasn't much spiritual energy in the room, it still made a sound, causing Xiaohua to be surprised. The innkeeper won't come looking for trouble, right? Xiaohua thought as he waved his sleeve, scattering the ashes of the robes on the ground. What is this? Xiaohua's sharp eyes saw something that looked like a piece of gold leaf in the ashes. The gold foil was as thin as a book page. Xiaohua exerted a bit of force and the gold foil could also be folded. However, when he loosened his hand, the gold foil would bounce open. Xiaohua used his finger to lightly flick it, and the gold foil would vibrate slightly. However, when Xiaohua looked at it again and again, the gold leaf was still gold leaf. He couldn't see anything special about it. Since the gold leaf was found in the ashes of the Taoist robe, Zhang Jihao must have hidden it in the Taoist robe. Since he took it so seriously, and didn't leave it in the storage bag, it must be something extremely important. But what is it? Or, this robe was also robbed and Zhang Jihao didn't know about it? Xiaohua looked at the gold leaf in his hand thoughtfully. At this moment, the room's restriction shone slightly. Xiaohua was surprised. This was the first time this kind of situation had happened. He didn't know how to deal with it. After a moment, the room started to tremble. Xiaohua came to his senses, and quickly stuck the yellow talisman on the door. He put the gold leaf in his hand into the space, and prepared to escape. Fellow Taoist, however, when Xiaohua removed the restriction in the room, a gentle voice came from outside. Xiaohua was surprised. He looked over and saw a Foundation Establishment cultivator looking at him with wrinkled brows. Senior Xiaohua didn't feel at ease and quickly jumped out of the room. He looked back with lingering fear and cupped his hands. Senior, do you have any instructions? Hee, I am the shopkeeper of this fish son, and the cultivator smiled and returned the greeting. Ah, shopkeeper? You. Why is your inn's room suddenly shaking? Is it going to collapse? Xiaohua quickly asked. As he spoke, he quickly walked away from the room. Fellow Taoist, don't panic. This isn't a problem with the inn's room. It's I who called fellow Taoist. The shopkeeper looked at Xiaohua's cultivation and said with a smile. Shopkeeper, why are you looking for I? Xiaohua immediately became vigilant. Nothing. Just now, fellow Taoist's room let out a huge rumble. I was afraid that fellow Taoist had an accident, so I came over to take a look. I already called you the first time, but fellow Taoist didn't respond, so I called you a second time. Xiaohua's eyes swiveled. How could he still not understand what the shopkeeper was referring to? He hurriedly blushed and bowed, saying, Junior accidentally drew a fireball talisman. I've truly nagged the shopkeeper. So it's like that. The shopkeeper looked inside the room. Sure enough, the fire attribute spiritual energy was abundant. He said with a smile, originally, fellow Taoist wasn't allowed to experiment with yellow talismans in the inn. However, fellow Taoist should also pay some attention. Fortunately, today is the day of the exchange. Apart from fellow Taoist, there's no one else in the inn. Otherwise, fellow Taoist would have greatly offended others. Ah, they've already gone to Yi City? Xiaohua was stunned. He quickly cupped his hands and said, Shopkeeper, excuse me. Junior also has to hurry to Yi City. I was careless and almost missed the time. The shopkeeper said with a smile. No hurry. Right now, it's just noon. There's still many hours before the evening market closes. Fellow Taoists can stroll around as much as you want. Oh right, fellow Taoist's room is due today. Do you want to continue renting it? Hearing the shopkeeper say that he was going to Yi City to stroll around, Xiaohua was unhappy. He waved his hand and said, Many thanks for Senior's reminder. Junior will return to the mountain after strolling around Yi City. I won't come to Jingbua City again. Alright, fellow Taoist, please. I hope that fellow Taoist will stay at Yuyang in the next time you come to Jingbua City. The shopkeeper smiled and raised his hand to salute. Xiaohua saluted and left without looking back. Not long after leaving the inn, Xiaohua first looked for a secluded place and draped Zhang Jihao's genuine camouflage cloak over his body, concealing his cultivation, and even concealing Xiaohua's height that was different from others. Xiaohua finally understood that as long as there was a possibility of him being seen, he had to wear this camouflage robe. He couldn't repeat the mistake of being targeted by Zhang Jihao. In Easy City, not only would the 100 Herbs Gate come, there would also be a lot of small fries who wanted to take advantage of him. Xiaohua had to be 100 times more careful. Yi City was in the same place as Yi. Xiaohua arrived at Yi City with ease. Today was clearly different from usual. Not to mention that he could hear the clamor of Yi City from far away, just by seeing the slightly multicolored brilliance in the sky above Yi City. Xiaohua knew that Jingbo City's disciples were patrolling here again. Sure enough, when Xiaohua arrived at the entrance of Yi City, a Jingbo City disciple around the 10th layer of qi refining stopped him. This didn't exist in the previous EG. Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, "Fellow Taoist, why don't you let I enter?" That disciple looked at Xiaohua's camouflage robe, and clearly didn't know Xiaohua's cultivation. He smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist, this is your first time coming to Yi City, right?" Chapter 1335. I'm not allowed to enter on my first try? Xiaohua sneered when he saw the politeness of the Jingbo City's disciple. Not at all, not at all. Fellow Taoist, I welcome you on behalf of Jingbo City's City Lord Zhao. The disciple smiled apologetically. However, according to the rules of Jingbo City, everyone who enters Yi City has to pay a mid-grade spirit stone as a fee for the services provided by Jingbo City. A mid-grade spirit stone? Xiaohua inwardly cursed. This was the price of a high-grade fireball talisman. Who knows how many cultivators there were in the trading market today? Who knows how much Jingbo City's income would be on the day of the trading market? They truly knew how to make money. Then, I can set up a stall to sell it? Xiaohua's heart stirred and he asked. That's right. Yi City is different from Yi City. Everyone has to pay a management fee. Anyone can sell it themselves. The disciple said politely. That's great. Xiaohua patted his storage pouch, and a piece of middle-grade spirit stone was casually handed over. He really had a rich and overbearing appearance. Fellow Taoist, please. After receiving the spirit stone, the Jingbo City's disciple handed over a scarlet communication talisman and said, "This is the communication talisman of Jingbo City. If fellow Taoist needs Jingbo City's help in Yi City, please send the communication talisman. This communication talisman can be used multiple times." After saying that, the disciple disappeared. Another mid-grade spirit stone is gone. Xiaohua sighed. This fireball talisman, I have to keep it for myself in the future. I can't sell it outside anymore. If someone takes it and attacks me, won't I be looking for trouble? But if that's the case, then won't I be unable to sell the confinement talisman? I can only sell spiritual herbs. Spiritual herbs are harmless, but I have to use them myself. If I have such a big place one day, I won't have to do anything but collect a mid-grade spirit stone from each person. Wouldn't I have made a fortune long ago? However, it's worth it to exchange a mid-grade spirit stone for Jingbo City's protection. Xiaohua smiled and kept the communication talisman in his storage pouch. Xiaohua was lost in his thoughts as he walked into Yi City. The layout of Yi City was similar to EG, but there were more people of all walks of life. Whether it was the sellers or the people wandering around, there were several times more people than before. However, even with so many people walking together, it didn't seem crowded. Clearly, Jingbo City had used some kind of spatial magic here. Yes, the more the merrier. Who will notice me? Xiaohua was very satisfied. He slowly walked, looking for what he needed. From time to time he would come across some commonly used items, such as Earth Escape Talisman, Earth Thorn Talisman, Diamond Talisman, Iron Cloak Talisman, and other yellow talismans. Xiaohua also bought a lot of them. A high-level sword talisman actually cost 3 mid-grade spirit stones. Xiaohua had a lot of spirit stones in his pouch, but he only bought 10 talismans. As for the Ice Thorn Talisman, Xiaohua had already obtained a refining method for the Ice Thorn Talisman. How could he go and buy another one? Along the way, there were more things than EG, but when it came to the uniqueness, it was still lacking. What cultivation method? What talisman refining method? What pill formula? None of it was available. Just as Xiaohua was thinking about whether he should set up a stall to sell his yellow talismans, he heard a commotion not far away. There was an urgent shout. High-level fire snake talisman. High-level fire snake talisman. Someone is selling the refining method for the fire snake talisman. When Xiaohua heard this, his spirit was greatly roused. A low-level fireball talisman was already so powerful when he refined it. If a high-level fire snake talisman was refined by him, what kind of power would it have? Soon after, everyone arrived at a small stall. The stall owner was an old man close to 60 years old with a cultivation base around the 11th layer of the aura refining realm. At this moment, there were already 3 cultivators standing in front of his stall. All of them were in the foundation building realm. One was close to 40 years old with a big face, a tall stature, and a loud and clear voice. One was around 50 years old with a short stature and a scoundrel head and mouse eyes. The last one had an ordinary stature and a white face without a beard. They were also around 40 years old. When Xiaohua walked closer, the cultivator with a white face and no beard had a displeased expression on his face. He said coldly, "Fellow Taoists, I saw the refining method for the fire snake talisman first. I'm currently discussing the price with this fellow Taoist. If you too want it, perhaps wait until I can't complete the transaction before coming forward." Hee, fellow Taoist. Are you fellow Taoist Meng from Deer Luo Mountain? The scoundrel head and mouse eyes cultivator asked in a shrill voice. It's really I, Meng Tian. Does fellow Taoist know I? Meng Tian's expression turned cold as he coldly looked at the cultivator. Fellow Taoist, you're overthinking. I'm Zhan Yu from Yellow Flower School. Greetings, fellow Taoist Meng. Zhan Yu said as he cupped his hands in greeting. Zhan Yu? When Xiaohua heard this name and looked at the scoundrel head and mouse eyes cultivator's appearance, he almost burst out laughing. However, Meng Tian was different. As soon as he heard Zhan Yu's name, his expression turned solemn. He bowed and saluted. Greetings, fellow Taoist Zhan. Hee, what about this fellow Taoist? Can you bestow a name? Zhan Yu nodded and asked the other person. That person hesitated for a moment, then cupped his hands and said, I'm Yan Luiying from Lumen Sect. Yan Luiying's voice was loud and clear. Everyone in the surroundings heard it. Alright, fellow Taoist, Yan is too polite. Zhan Yu and Meng Tian both saluted. Xiaohua, who was at the side, was bewildered. Just now, the 3 of them were practically at daggers drawn. Why did they suddenly extinguish their anger and change to small talk? Just as Xiaohua was puzzled, Zhan Yu said with a smile. Fellow Taoist Meng, since everyone has introduced themselves, the following matters will be much easier. I won't hide it from fellow Taoist. Before fellow Taoist made the inquiry, I also discussed with this fellow Taoist. When the old man heard this, he hurriedly said, Yes, this senior asked before, and it's just that this fellow Taoist wanted either 300 high-grade spirit stones or 3 foundation establishment pills. It really made I scratch my head, so I retreated to the side to think. Zhan Yu looked at the old man and said slowly. When Meng Tian heard this, he frowned slightly and said with a smile. Since fellow Taoist Zhan has already retreated, then it's naturally I's turn? But I also said I didn't want it? Zhan Yu sneered. Ha, that's right. Fellow Taoist Zhan also didn't say he didn't want it. Fellow Taoist Meng's inquiry is really inappropriate. Yan Luiying said with a smile. Fellow Taoist Yan, even if I disturbed fellow Taoist Zhan, what does it have to do with fellow Taoist? Meng Tian unhappily replied. That's right. Since fellow Taoist Meng disturbed fellow Taoist Zhan, then what's the point of I disturbing fellow Taoist Meng and making an inquiry? After all, didn't fellow Taoist Meng also not take out 300 high-grade spirit stones? Yan Luiying retorted. This Meng Tian was speechless. It wasn't that he didn't want the refining method of the fire snake talisman, but this, the old man's price was really too high, exceeding his expectations. 3 foundation establishment pills, that could possibly create 3 foundation establishment experts. Seeing that the old man's cultivation was only around the 11th level of the qi refining realm, he probably wanted to use these 3 foundation establishment pills as a final struggle. If I'd known earlier, I would have cut the Gordian knot. 300 high-grade spirit stones. It's not like I can't afford it. Meng Tian secretly regretted. Sure enough, Zhan Yu said with a smile. Since both fellow Taoists want the refining method of the talisman, and both of you are around the same time, I won't say anything more. The highest bidder gets it. What do you all think? That's the only way, Yan Luiying said with a smile. Soon after, she looked around and said with a clear smile. Which other fellow Taoist is interested in the refining method? Please come over together. However, I'll say this first. We've already left our names, so any fellow Taoist who goes up must also reveal their true identity. Xiao Hua heard the first part of Yan Luiying's words, and his heart was greatly moved. Unfortunately, he couldn't take out 300 high-grade spirit stones for the time being. When he heard the last part of Yan Luiying's words, he gave up even more. A brat at the second level of the Qi refining realm competing with a foundation establishment cultivator for the talisman refining method. That was truly courting death. Looking to the side, there were also many people who were restless at first, but soon after, they all became quiet. Just like Xiao Hua, they quietly watched. Hee little sister Rui. Did you see that? It's the same scene as the last time we met in E-City. These 3 seniors are also going to bid. A gentle voice came from behind Xiao Hua. That voice wasn't loud, but it slowly became clear. Clearly, someone had walked behind Xiao Hua. That's right, brother Fan. It seems that every time E-City has such interesting things. This was a woman's voice. It carried a bit of sadness, a bit of melancholy, and a bit of curiosity. When these 2 sentences entered Xiao Hua's ears, it was simply countless times louder than the clamor of the entire E-City. It was as if 2 thunderbolts had struck Xiao Hua's ears. Moreover, these words were like a top-grade confinement talisman. No, it was like a body immobilization technique, which froze Xiao Hua in place. Xiao Hua only felt his entire body stiffen, and he couldn't move an inch. However, in his heart, there was an incomparable longing. He longed to turn his head and look at Xiao Xianrui, who was no longer his senior sister. Isn't that so? At E-City, there are always strange things that attract the covetous eyes of many. For example, the refining method of this fire snake talisman is usually passed down in secret by talisman-making sections. It's definitely not easily taken out. Presumably, this fellow Taoist at the 11th level of Qi refining saw that there was no hope of breaking through, so he came up with this plan. Regardless of whether these 3 seniors obtain the refining method, their sex will be able to refine the fire snake talisman. A fire snake talisman is worth a lot of spirit stones. If it weren't for the fact that our 100 Herbs sect isn't good at talisman making, I would also want to compete with them. Jiang Fan's voice rang out. These 3 seniors are all in the foundation establishment stage. If you go up, won't you be causing trouble for our 100 Herbs sect? Xiao Xianrui's tone was rather worried and reproachful. Sister Rui, you're wrong. These 3 seniors have made their identities clear in order to avoid trouble. No matter who reveals their identity, as long as they have enough spirit stones, they can openly purchase the method of making charms in their hands. Then, others won't look for trouble. Xiao Xianrui rebuked. Then last time at E-City, wasn't it because of the peacock fantasy that we encountered the 10,000 Poisons sect? If it weren't for you, how could there be so much trouble? If it weren't for the peacock fantasy and the 10,000 Poisons sect, how could I have met and become friends with you? Jiang Fan said in a low voice. Xiao Xianrui softly snorted through her nose. It sounded very sweet. Xiao Hua no longer paid attention to what was happening at the stall in front of him. He only focused on listening to the sounds behind him. What a pity. The peacock fantasy is a witness to our meeting. You're actually willing to give it to Xiao Hua. Jiang Fan was somewhat unwilling. Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. Chapter 1336. Xiao Xianrui giggled and said, You and I are already together. With the peacock illusion in my hands, I can still reminisce about the past, but it's better to let it go with Xiao Hua. Alas, I don't know how Xiao Hua is now. It's hard to say. According to the news from Huanhua sect, Xiao Hua hasn't appeared around Huanhua sect. He's only a second-layer Qi refining cultivator, and has no experience outside. Where could he have gone? I'm afraid he was either eaten by a demon beast or killed by a rogue cultivator. Jiang Fan whispered with regret. What a pity. That peacock illusion. Oh, if Sister Rui is worried, when we return from E-City, I'll send a disciple to look for Xiao Hua. Don't look for him for what? Xiao Xianrui quickly shook her head. Just as she was about to speak, Xiao Hua, who was wearing a camouflage robe, slightly turned his head, glanced at the two, and coughed in a low voice. The familiar coughing sound caused Xiao Xianrui's whole body to shake, but when she looked up at Xiao Hua, she was immediately disappointed. Jiang Fan hurriedly bowed and said, "This poor Taoist was rude, please forgive me." Xiao Hua didn't answer. He turned his head, and his eyes were filled with Xiao Xianrui's unusually delicate face. At this time, Xiao Xianrui was much thinner than before. Her eyebrows were slightly wrinkled, and her big eyes carried a trace of confusion and worry. In front of the crowd, the competition between the three foundation establishment cultivators had already reached its climax. All three of them were flushed with anger. The surrounding cultivators were also looking on happily, quietly waiting for the method to refine the fire serpent talisman to fall into someone's hands. However, in this crowd, there were two people who were different from the others. Although Xiao Hua's eyes were looking forward, all of his attention was placed behind him. He turned a deaf ear to the three foundation establishment cultivators. Xiao Xianrui's eyes were looking forward, but from time to time, her eyes would glance at Xiao Hua, who was of the same height as her. She thought to herself that the coughing sound was obviously Xiao Hua's, but how could Xiao Hua have a camouflage robe? Back then, only when I, Shang Huaming, went bankrupt could I exchange for a camouflage robe. Xiao Hua couldn't have exchanged for one in such a short time. But if it wasn't him, why was the sound so similar? Even if Mystique can change its voice, it can't completely change into another person's voice. Not long after, the competition in front of the crowd came to an end. Yan Luiying from the Lumen faction was rich and overbearing. She directly used the price of 400 high-grade spiritual stones to buy the talisman crafting method of the fire snake talisman. On the other hand, Meng Tian and Zhan Yu were slightly depressed. After Yan Luiying stored the talisman crafting technique into her storage pouch and handed over the spirit stones to the old man, she cupped her hands towards Meng Tian and Zhan Yu in satisfaction before swaggering off. Meng Tian and Zhan Yu also smiled bitterly at each other before parting ways. Seeing that the three of them had left, the onlookers had also dispersed. Xiao Hua sighed in his heart, then turned around to look at Xiao Xianrui, and disappeared along with the crowd. "Let's go, Sister Rui. Let's take a look over there. Maybe there's something similar to the peacock fantasy." Jiang Fan obviously didn't notice Xiao Xianrui's absent-minded expression. He pulled Xiao Xianrui's sleeve and walked in the opposite direction. Xiao Xianrui looked at Xiao Hua, who had already disappeared. She also sighed from the bottom of her heart and turned around to leave. Xiao Xianrui knew that even if the person wearing the mystique was Xiao Hua, there were more than 100 people wearing the same mystique in each city. As long as Xiao Hua disappeared and immediately reappeared, who would know that the two mystique were the same person? She might never find Xiao Hua again. In fact, Xiao Hua also had the same idea. After leaving, he turned around and wanted to walk back to Xiao Xianrui's side. However, he only walked a few steps before stopping. He secretly asked in his heart, "Why should I go back now?" Yes, what could Xiao Hua do? Be a spectator? Look at the sweet relationship between Jiang Fan and Xiao Xianrui. It would be fine if he didn't see it, but if he saw it too much, wouldn't it arouse Jiang Fan's suspicion? Forget it, forget it. We've already embarked on different paths. Why should we think about reuniting? Xiao Hua let out a bitter laugh from the bottom of his heart. His footsteps slipped, and he deviated from the direction he was going, and went to another place. After walking for a long time, Xiao Hua still didn't find anything suitable. Just as he was feeling depressed, he saw that there were more cultivators in front of him compared to other places. Isn't this the place where I met Shi Wuming last time? It seems to be selling demonic tools. Why are there so many of them today? Because he had experienced the power of the demonic spear, Xiao Hua was also curious about the demonic tools. He quickly walked a few steps and entered the area. Today was the same as that day. There were also some cultivators sitting cross-legged. Some pitch-black demonic tools were placed in front of them. Just like other places, there were many more demonic tools, and there were also many more people looking at them. Xiao Hua followed some people and walked to the front of a stall. Like the others, he first looked at the demonic tools on the stall. These demonic tools were also strange of every description. He couldn't see what they were used for. Seeing the others pick up the demonic tools and touch them with their hands and carefully look at them with their eyes, Xiaohua followed suit. He picked up a demonic tool that was similar to a 5-star one. He knew that the demonic spear was very heavy, so he thought that the 5-star one would be heavy as well. However, the 5-star one was extremely light, as if it didn't have any weight. Xiaohua used all his strength and almost flipped himself over. His figure slightly staggered. The stall owner seemed to have noticed Xiaohua's abnormality and coldly glanced at him. Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. And fortunately, this bewildering mist is the real deal. The stall owner actually didn't see through Xiaohua's bewildering mist. The stall owner said in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist, be careful." I know," Xiaohua replied. His voice was very old. Obviously, Xiaohua changed his voice through the bewildering mist. The 5-star one's hand was extremely cold, bone-piercing cold. However, Xiaohua looked left and right, up and down, but he didn't find anything strange. The 5-star 5 corners weren't sharp and didn't have any similarities with the demonic spear tip. Fellow Taoist, Xiaohua thought for a moment and put the 5-star on the stall. He cupped his hands and asked, "May I ask, where did fellow Taoist get this demonic tool?" The stall owner was slightly stunned. Soon after, he said with some displeasure, "This demonic tool is of course in the Imperial Demon Valley. As for how it fell into I's hands, fellow Taoist shouldn't be interested. If fellow Taoist likes this demonic tool, I will let you have some. Take 10 top-grade spirit stones and this demonic tool will belong to fellow Taoist." 10 top-grade spirit stones? Xiaohua immediately denied and secretly cursed. Why is it so expensive? It's better to rob. However, Xiaohua immediately thought of the might of the demonic spear tip. Compared to 10 top-grade spirit stones, this price didn't seem expensive. "I will choose again," Xiaohua said with a smile. "And fellow Taoist, as you wish." The stall owner nodded and then reminded, "I obtained this demonic tool from the Battle of the Imperial Demon Valley 3 years ago. It's definitely the latest. Last time, a lot of it was sold in the e-market. There's only a little left. If fellow Taoist doesn't decide today, I'm afraid that in the next e-market, you won't see this demonic tool and won't see this demonic tool's area." Imperial Demon Valley? Battle? Xiaohua was stunned. Could it be some kind of battle between immortals and demons? Xiaohua didn't know what the battle between immortals and demons was. He only heard Zhang Qingxiao nagging in his ear. "I want to make a move, but I haven't found anything suitable." Xiaohua thought for a moment and prevaricated. "And I know fellow Taoist's concerns. This demonic tool can't be controlled with divine sense, and can't be activated with magic power. Their specific effects can only be explored by oneself. However, fellow Taoist, you have to understand that there are only so many demonic tools. If fellow Taoist doesn't make a move as soon as possible, there won't be any left after today. Moreover, if fellow Taoist's luck is good, you may encounter a demonic tool that can be used by fellow Taoist's special divine ability. Then, fellow Taoist will make a fortune. Although this demonic tool is the remnant of the true demonic tool of the demon realm, its quality and other aspects are more powerful than the magic tools and treasures of my Xiaoyu continent. Then, fellow Taoist, do you have a relatively sharp demonic tool that can kill people as long as it's inserted into their body?" Xiaohua asked. "Hehe, fellow Taoist is indeed an expert. Take a look at this." As he spoke, the cultivator slapped his storage bag and took out a pitch-black dagger and handed it over. Xiaohua took it. The dagger was also very light. The blade and the tip of the dagger faintly glowed with a cold light, appearing extremely sharp. And good stuff. Xiaohua was not stingy with his praise. Indeed, this demonic tool is also one of the intact ones in I's possession. Not only is it incomparably sharp, but it also has the blood-sucking ability that fellow Taoist mentioned. As long as this demonic tool is inserted into the body of a cultivator, the true blood in their heart meridians will be sucked away by the demonic tool, thus killing the cultivator. If it's a dark cultivator from the demon realm, the true nucleus in their heart meridians will also be broken and sucked into the demonic tool. Blood-sucking. Xiaohua secretly nodded and asked, such a good thing, how many spirit stones? I have been long-winded with you. So just give me 15 top-grade spirit stones. So much? Xiaohua was once again dumbfounded. At this time, Shi Wuming's hateful face was already incomparably benevolent in Xiaohua's mind. Shi Wuming had reduced the price of the demonic spear tip from 10 top-grade spirit stones to 1 top-grade spirit stone. And Xiaohua himself did not have to pay that many spirit stones to obtain the demonic spear tip. Xiaohua looked at the stall owner and cupped his hands. He did not say anything and continued to walk towards another stall. This stall was similar to the previous one, but there were a few more people. These people could not squeeze in, so they did not squeeze and just stood there quietly watching. Fellow Taoist Xiaohua's courage increased a lot. He came in front of an 11th stage Qi refining cultivator and cupped his hands and asked, "Are the demonic tools in this stall all from 3 years ago?" The cultivator glanced at Xiaohua and said, "The stall owner said so. How can we know? Unless we go to the Imperial Devil Valley and guard there. As long as a cultivator comes out of the valley, we will go and ask for the demonic tools. Only then can we guarantee that we will get the real demonic tools." These demonic tools all come from the Imperial Devil Valley? Xiaohua looked up at the stall in the distance and asked in a very casual tone. To be continued. Chapter 1337. That cultivator looked Xiaohua up and down and said coldly, "Fellow Taoist, this question is very peculiar. If the demonic artifact doesn't come from demon-resisting valley, where else can it come from? Do you think demonic cultivators can forge such a quality demonic artifact?" Demonic cultivators? Xiaohua heard this term for the first time, and was slightly astonished in his heart. However, he wasn't afraid at all and said with a smile, "Demonic cultivators have a long history. If a demonic cultivator with profound cultivation can forge such a demonic artifact, it shouldn't be considered much." Although Xiaohua was smiling, that laughter was clearly concealing his ignorance. "Uft." That cultivator laughed as expected and said while clapping, "Fellow Taoist, this viewpoint is indeed interesting. I have never thought of it. However, if a demonic cultivator really wants to forge such a demonic artifact, then he must have the materials to forge this demonic artifact. This demonic artifact's materials can only be found in the devil world. Where can we find them in the cultivation world?" Xiaohua's face flushed red, and he argued forcefully, "Donrain continent is vast and boundless. How can fellow Taoists assert that there aren't suitable materials? Of course there are substitute materials. Otherwise, where would demonic cultivators get their handy magic artifacts? But if it's the real materials, how can my Donrain continent have them? This Donrain continent's heaven and earth is filled with spiritual energy, and not a bit of demonic qi. How do you want these materials to be formed?" Ridicule already appeared in that cultivator's mouth. This Xiaohua finally understood the crux of forging demonic artifacts, and the formation of demonic artifacts materials. He was at a loss for words for a moment, but his eyes turned and he said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist doesn't know, but it doesn't mean that my Donrain continent doesn't have them." Fellow Taoist is right. That cultivator was slightly dazed, and the ridicule in his tone turned into approval. He nodded and said, "Sai, Donrain continent's 10 great danger zones. Are they something we can covet? If there's some mysterious matter inside, amen. Even if there's demonic qi, I also wouldn't find it strange." 10 great danger zones? Xiaohua was even more dazed and truly felt his inadequacy. However, he didn't dare to ask again. Hearing that cultivator's meaning, these 10 great danger zones should be something every cultivator could know. If he asked too much, it would appear superficial. "Haha, that's precisely what I meant." Xiaohua cupped his hands and laughed with an unfathomable appearance. "All right, fellow Taoist over there, please step aside. Fellow Taoist, after you." That cultivator very elegantly invited Xiaohua to choose. Xiaohua shook his head and said, "Since fellow Taoist saw it first, fellow Taoist has the right to choose first." "Fellow Taoist, please go first." "Since fellow Taoist says so, I'll take a look first." "And fellow Taoist, please." Xiaohua had a smile on his face. He was embarrassingly short on money, so there was no way he could buy anything, so he naturally had to be cultured and refined. Admittedly, this demonic artifact wasn't of much use to cultivators, and its price was ridiculously high. However, there were so many people who came to choose and look at it. It seemed that if they didn't come here to take a look, they wouldn't be able to show off their profound cultivation. And needless to say, even Xiao Hua, a small cultivator at the second layer of the qi refining stage, was full of curiosity towards demonic artifacts, so there was no need to say anything about the others. Xiao Hua took some time to find a demonic artifact that was similar to a spear tip. That demonic artifact's weight was neither light nor heavy, and it was in line with the weight of an ordinary person. However, when Xiao Hua held it in his hand, he didn't feel anything at all. He squinted his eyes and carefully looked at it again and again. Apart from the pitch-black demonic artifact, he couldn't see any other peculiarities. This thing. Why is there a crack behind the spear tip? Xiao Hua's gaze very naturally fell on the bottom of the spear tip. It seems that my spear tip also has a crack, and the bottom of that 5-star spear also has a trace of a crack. Xiao Hua suddenly understood. Since this demonic artifact came from the Imperial Devil Valley, it was left behind from the so-called Great War of Immortals and Devils. Then, these demonic artifacts were also left behind in the Imperial Devil Valley after they were damaged in the battle between the Devil World and the cultivators of the Dawn Rain continent. Then when cultivators were cleaning up the battlefield, they brought these demonic artifacts out from the Imperial Devil Valley. That's right, Sect Master also went to the Imperial Devil Valley several years ago. His cultivation was only at the Foundation establishment stage, so he couldn't directly face the people from the Devil World. Presumably, he also went there for these things. Xiao Hua thought of Xiao Yuehang, and his heart became gloomy. He didn't have the mood to look anymore, so he threw the spear tip on the stall, got up, and left. After only walking 4 or 5 steps, Xiao Hua suddenly thought, since there are damaged demonic artifacts, then there must also be complete demonic artifacts. Just a fragment is worth 10 top-grade spirit stones. How many spirit stones would a complete demonic artifact cost? Soon after, Xiao Hua mocked himself. Perhaps only devil cultivators would pay such a high price to buy a complete demonic artifact. What the hell am I thinking about? Oh, that's right. I wonder if Senior she came. Ever since returning from Jingbua City, Xiao Hua didn't have the slightest bit of disgust toward Shi Wuming's forceful buying and selling. There was only gratitude. If it wasn't for the demonic spear tip, he really didn't know the result of his fight with Zhang Jihao. Xiao Hua then circled the entire area, but there was no sign of Shi Wuming. And that day, Senior Nisi seemed to have said that he couldn't participate in this e-bazaar, so he came to e-bazaar. Also because of some urgent matter, and because he couldn't say it out loud, he forced himself to sell the spear tip to me. Today he naturally won't be here. Thinking, Xiao Hua stepped out of the demonic artifact area and walked towards the depths of E-Market. In the time it took to eat a meal, Xiao Hua encountered a few more things that needed to be bid on. One of them was a circular magic tool with countless runes lingering on its surface. With a push of magic power, the runes left the body and gave birth to countless flames, roasting the surrounding air until it was scorching hot. The bidders were 4 Foundation establishment cultivators. These 4 people also didn't wear the camouflage cloak and came forward with their original appearance. There was also a fragment of a magic tool similar to a pipe, and it was still half a pipe. Xiao Hua was far away, so he couldn't clearly see the runes on this fragment. However, the bidders were actually 2 cultivators who were completely enthralled, so he couldn't see the cultivation level on it. However, the price was extremely high, far beyond what Xiao Hua could imagine. Listening to the whispers of the cultivators next to him, Xiao Hua knew that this magic artifact could only be controlled by cultivators above the Foundation establishment stage with divine sense. Even if it was just a fragment, its power was inconceivable, so the bidding price was extremely high. And to be able to pay such a price, or to be able to control this fragment, could only be a gold core stage cultivator. At that time, Xiao Hua looked at the 2 Foundation establishment stage cultivators in front of him, his eyes shining. He secretly thought that if he was one of the 2, then it would be great. he would immediately turn back and capture 100 Herbs Gate's Jiangfan, then take Xiao Xianrui to Yaonong Peak for revenge. Unfortunately, just as he thought about it, Xiao Hua came across the fourth round of bidding. The fourth round of bidding was something Xiao Hua was interested in. It was a 2,000-year-old spiritual plant. Inside the space behind Xiao Hua's head, ever since he advanced to the second layer of the aura refining realm, the tracing light ray was even more effective. The spiritual plants inside the space grew for 1 day, equivalent to 2 years of growth outside. Many of the spiritual plants were already 200 years old. If nothing unexpected happened, in another year, Xiao Hua would have a large number of 1,000-year-old spiritual plants. How to deal with these spiritual plants and what kind of price to sell them, Xiao Hua muttered in his heart. Therefore, when he saw a spiritual plant being auctioned, he naturally paid attention to it. This was a rather large stall with a lot of spiritual plants on it. A white-haired foundation establishment stage cultivator was calmly standing behind the stall. There were also 3 cultivators standing in front of the stall with their hands clasped behind their backs. One of them was wearing a camouflage robe, so it was impossible to tell his gender and cultivation level. The other one was wearing an ordinary Taoist robe. He was about 50 years old, and his cultivation level was at the late stage of the foundation establishment stage. His face looked a bit miserable. The last one looked a bit sloppy with white hair. He was about 60 years old, and his cultivation level was at the early stage of the foundation establishment stage. Xiao Hua had just walked to the left side when he saw the 50-year-old man cupped his hands and said, "I am 10,000 Flowers Valley's medicine master Sui. How should I address this fellow Taoist?" This senior is called Medicine Master Sui? Xiao Hua was stunned when he heard this. Previously, he had heard the name of 10,000 Flowers Valley's Medicine Master Sui at e.g. It was said that he could refine the foundation establishment pill. He thought that his surname was Sui, and because he was an alchemist, he was respectfully called Medicine Master Sui. He didn't expect this person's name to be Medicine Master Sui. Just when Xiao Hua was in a daze, the person wearing the camouflage robe spoke. This person's voice was a bit hoarse and also a bit sharp. It should have already been modified by the camouflage robe. I was here first. This 2,000-year-old Chilean grass is what I deserve. What qualifications do you have to ask I for my name? Fellow Taoist, what are you saying? Didn't fellow Taoist feel that one piece of top-grade spirit stone is too high and is still bargaining? Since the stall owner is not willing to reduce the price, and I and this fellow Taoist Lai are willing to buy it at the price of one piece of top-grade spirit stone. You can naturally bid according to the rules of Jinghua City. As for whether fellow Taoist is willing to announce his name or not, that is fellow Taoist's freedom. Of course, one piece of top-grade spirit stone is high. Normally, a 1,000-year-old main ingredient is only 100 pieces of top-grade spirit stone. Why is this 2,000-year-old spirit herb so outrageous? The cultivator was somewhat angry. The price of this 2,000-year-old spirit herb is not casually stated. If you don't believe me, you can ask fellow Taoist Lai. Medicine Master Sui laughed. This one is 100 Herb Sex Lai Hong. The 60-year-old man cupped his hands and said, 100 Herb Sect. When Xiao Hua heard this, his eyes slightly shrank. Immediately, his impression of this old man changed greatly. No matter how he looked at him, this old man had the appearance of a rat. My country of Xi's exchange practice is that a 100-year-old main ingredient can be exchanged for a mid-grade spirit stone. A 1,000-year-old main ingredient's price is not 10 times, but 100 pieces of top-grade spirit stones. As for a 2,000-year-old main ingredient, it cannot be twice the price. As for the amount of spirit stones, it depends on the quality of the spirit herb. This Qi lotus grass is originally rare. Not to mention a 1,000-year-old. Even a 100-year-old one is not commonly seen. Moreover, fellow Taoist must also know that the Qi lotus grass has other unique uses. I believe fellow Taoist is also aiming for this. A piece of top-grade spirit stone is really nothing. After Lai Hong finished speaking, he looked at Medicine Master Sui and smiled. Fellow Taoist Sui is also a kindred spirit. I wonder if what I said is correct? Chapter 1338. Hearing Lai Hong's explanation, Medicine Master Sui smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist is right. This is the common market in Xi's cultivation world. I wonder, what do you think? If there are no objections, shall we begin the bidding?" Jinghua City has already explained the bidding rules clearly. What objections can I have? The cultivator's voice was sharp and light. I don't understand. Usually it's first come, first served. Why does it change in Jinghua City? The guests should follow the host's wishes. This is an unbreakable truth. Medicine Master Sui was happy to explain. Jinghua City's auction on the day of the exchange is based on the rules of the auction in the north of the city. It protects the value of the seller's item, and also ensures that the buyer can make the best use of the item. It can be considered a great initiative. Fellow Taoist Sui has been to the auction in the north of the city. The cultivator was surprised. Haha, how can I go directly with my cultivation level? It was just my humble sect master who brought me there to broaden my horizons. Sigh, that kind of grandeur, that kind of extravagance, the rarity of those items, the mystery of those treasures, it really opened my eyes. Medicine Master Sui sighed with emotion. The northern part of the city is the central area of Jinghua City. Only cultivators above the Aura's core stage can enter. That city. Oh, that's not right, it's the auction gathering. How spectacular is it? When Xiaohua heard this, he couldn't help but recall Fan Riguan's introduction, and his heart was rather filled with admiration. As expected, when the cultivator heard this, he fell silent. Lai Hong smiled and said, "I've heard that in this auction, anyone can participate in the bidding. Everyone is dressed in a supreme-grade bewitching robe, and whoever offers the most spirit stones will be called out. In the end, whoever offers the most spirit stones will get the item. It's really similar to this auction." "We still lack a manager," the cultivator sneered. "Why don't we invite the disciples of Jinghua City over?" No need, no need. Who knows how many bids there are in this auction? Why would the disciples of Jinghua City care? Just let them protect our safety." Lai Hong waved his hand and said, "Our Qi lotus grass is only 2,000 years old. If it's 10,000 years old, only then would we have the right to talk to them. 10,000 years old? He would have gone to the north of the city a long time ago. Why would he appear here?" The cultivator retorted. "All right, let's exchange some pleasantries. Everyone should know the price of this Qilian grass, right? Let's start quickly. There are many good things on the day of the exchange. Let's go look around," Medicine Master Sui said with a smile. Seeing the two nodding, Medicine Master Sui muttered to himself and announced his price. The two of them also pondered for a moment. Qilian grass was finally won by the cultivator in the camouflage robe at the price of 1/2 extreme grade spirit stone. Looking at Medicine Master Sui and Lai Hong's disappointed expression and the cultivator's face that couldn't be seen, Xiaohua was secretly happy. He could definitely guess that the cultivator's face was absolutely helpless. He didn't make a move on Qilian grass that was originally 1 extreme grade spirit stone. In the end, it was actually 1/2 an extreme grade spirit stone. 1/2 an extreme grade spirit stone was 500 high grade spirit stones. Xiaohua was happy just thinking about it. Of course, how could he not be happy? He didn't know the effects of the Qilian grass, but a 2,000-year-old spiritual herb was calculated in terms of extreme-grade spirit stones. Even if the spiritual herbs in his space weren't anything precious, couldn't 2 of them be exchanged for 1 extreme-grade spirit stone? Then all the spiritual herbs, how many extreme-grade spirit stones could he exchange for? Thinking about it, Xiaohua's saliva almost flowed out. When he realized that he had lost his composure, he hurriedly wiped away his saliva as if nothing had happened. Only then did he realize. Who could see through the camouflage robe? Pill formula, pill formula. Crying sale. Is there anyone who wants to bid? A loud voice came from the side of Xiaohua. Pill formula? When Xiaohua heard it, he immediately quivered and thought to himself, Is there a mistake? There's really someone selling pill formulas? His reaction was still too slow. While he was still in a daze, The nearby cultivators who could hear the voice all swarmed towards the source of the sound. When Xiaohua came to his senses and rushed over, the small stall was already 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. Moreover, behind Xiaohua, there were many cultivators who heard the voice and came over. Xiaohua could only watch from afar. The stall owner was a short and stout cultivator around the 7th layer of the qi refining realm. When he saw so many cultivators being attracted by him, the small eyes on his face had long turned into small bean pods. His fingers that were as thick as radishes slightly rubbed against each other. Fine beads of sweat seeped out of his white neck that was filled with bulging flesh. Fellow Taoist, your pill formula. What is it? Can you let I take a look? An 11th layer qi refining cultivator stepped out from the crowd. In fact, everyone had the same idea, but no one believed that there really was a pill formula here, so they just stood there and watched. Fellow Taoist, aren't you going to ask about the price first? The short and stout cultivator said with a smile. If it's a pill formula, I will definitely go all out to get it. Why ask about the price now? The cultivator shook his head with a smile, looking determined to get it. Fellow Taoist's tone isn't small. Another cultivator also walked out. Xiaohua recognized this person. It was 100 Herbs Gate's Lai Hong. Io, it's Senior Lai from 100 Herbs Gate. Junior greets you. That cultivator hurriedly cupped his hands and said, Junior is Xuanyan Cult's Wan Lei. Oh, so you're a disciple of Xuanyan Cult. I was wondering why you were so arrogant. Lai Hong nodded slightly. I wouldn't dare. My sect forbids its disciples from being ostentatious. Junior was just joking just now. Wan Lei was very humble and smiled apologetically. In this market, it all depends on the spirit stones. If Senior can take out suitable spirit stones, I definitely wouldn't dare to overstep my boundaries. You can just say that it depends on the spirit stones. If you take out real spirit stones, I won't be able to win against you. I'll just turn and leave. How could Lai Hong not understand what he meant? I wouldn't dare. Wan Lei shook his head repeatedly. Just as the two of them were talking, a few more people stepped out from the crowd, seemingly wanting to participate in the bidding. Lai Hong looked around. Other than the 4 of them who were dressed in camouflage, the rest were all qi refinement cultivators. He could not help but scold them. What's the hurry? I came up just to check the authenticity of the elixir formula. Now that all of you are here, do you want to start the bidding immediately? We wouldn't dare. Senior Lai, please come up and appraise it. A few cultivators said in unison. Yes. Lai Hong was extremely satisfied. He turned to the short and fat cultivator and said, Fellow Taoist, can you let I take a look at the elixir formula first? The fat on the short and fat cultivator's face trembled slightly as he smiled. Of course I can. However, what price do you intend to pay? Lai Hong frowned and said impatiently, Ordinary elixir formulas are worth 500 superior grade spirit stones to 1 supreme grade spirit stone. However, these are all priceless. What's the point of saying this now? If you don't let me take a look at the elixir formula, how can you bid? 1 supreme grade spirit stone? The fat on the fat man's face was about to burn. He rubbed his hands and said with a smile. Then, what about the incomplete elixir formula? It'll cost at least a few hundred superior grade spirit stones. Incomplete? Lai Hong's expression changed slightly as he scolded. You rascal, can't you be more reliable? An incomplete elixir formula and a complete elixir formula are completely different. Every elixir has its own unique refining method and special incantation. If the elixir formula doesn't have such records, how can it be refined into a complete elixir? Senior Lai, look at my cultivation. I'm afraid I can't refine elixirs. This elixir formula is something I obtained by chance. How would I know if it's complete? It's just that there are missing pages in the booklet, so I think it's incomplete. The fat man said apologetically, but his expression didn't seem to be embarrassed at all. Take it out and let me take a look. My 100 Herbs clan has some reputation in the country of Xi. We definitely won't lie to you. Lai Hong was already impatient and said impatiently. Yes, yes, I'll take it out now. The fat man smiled apologetically and clapped his hands. A thin booklet was handed over halfway. He hesitated again. Senior, if you look at the elixir formula, wouldn't you have learned it? Lai Hong looked coldly at the booklet and smiled. Then I won't look at it. However, if I take this elixir formula and realize that it's incomplete, I will definitely look for the disciples of Jinghua City to seek justice. By then, I'm sure you can afford to compensate me tenfold. But, Senior is willing. The fat man was a little anxious. This humble Taoist is willing to do so. However, this humble Taoist wants a complete pill formula, not an incomplete one. This is something that all the fellow Taoists present can testify to. Lai Hong pointed to the surroundings and said, furthermore, if it's incomplete, you should tell me where it's incomplete. Otherwise, I'll be deceived by you. All right. The fat man was helpless and could only hand over the elixir formula. Don't worry, fellow Taoist. I will only take a rough look. I definitely won't remember the details. Your elixir formula won't be leaked. Lai Hong took it and smiled. Senior Lai, please appraise it. The fat man cupped his hands and forced a smile. Lai Hong opened the booklet cautiously. He frowned and said softly, Yellow Marrow Elixir. This elixir seems to have been lost for a long time. Then Lai Hong did not continue reading. He flipped through page after page. First he frowned. Then he was overjoyed, and then he frowned again. Finally, Lai Hong stopped reading and flipped to the very end of the booklet, where the booklet was incomplete. In the end, the expression on Lai Hong's face was interesting. Was it regret? Was it anger? Or was it regret? Then Lai Hong flipped through the booklet again in detail. He threw the booklet at the fat man and said with a cold smile, Fellow Taoist, are you making fun of me? The fat man caught the elixir formula booklet in a fluster. His expression changed drastically as he hurriedly asked, Senior Lai, this elixir formula, isn't it too incomplete? But I see that there are quite a lot of things inside. Haha. Lai Hong stared at the fat man carefully for a long while. He was so angry that he started laughing instead. Chapter 1339. In the boundless void, there was no light at all. All of a sudden, an invisible crack appeared in the void, leaving a huge mark in the void. The mark was either expanding or shrinking. The expanding crack was like a ripple on the surface of a lake, spreading in all directions. The surface of the lake was limited, but the void was limitless. Hence, the crack did not show any signs of stopping. The shrinking crack only expanded slightly before shrinking rapidly, returning to its original state. However, it did not stop, continuing to shrink without any signs of stopping. Until it shrank to its limit, it suddenly formed a huge void, swallowing everything around it. Then it shrank again, and then it disappeared. Hence, in this silent void, even though there was no sound, danger was everywhere. At some point in time, in an unknown location in the void, another normal crack in the void suddenly appeared. In the crack, which would not have any abnormalities, a slender human figure actually appeared. Immediately after, a faint light appeared on that person's body, and a flat light shield that was similar to the shape of this person suddenly appeared. Under this faint light, one could see that it was a young man of 17 or 18 years old. He had a high nose bridge, thin lips, and a pair of long and narrow eyes, just like the eyes of a phoenix looking down on all living things. It was a pity that these eyes were tightly shut. When this person appeared from the crack in the void, they had been tightly shut, and one could not see the elegance of opening his eyes. This person's eyebrows were extremely thick and slender. His brows were slightly furrowed, and he seemed to be in pain. Needless to say, this person was Zhang Xiaohua, who wanted to be sent to the ruins from the transportation formation in the forest. However, the plan could not keep up with the changes, or perhaps the road to happiness was strewn with setbacks. Zhang Xiaohua used a stone from the Crouching Ox Rock as a vitality stone to place in the groove of the transportation formation. He did not know the power of the vitality stone, and only released the vitality in the stone completely. The Crouching Ox Rock was born together with Zhang Xiaohua's bracelet, and the vitality in it was far from what a normal vitality stone could compare to. How could the transportation formation withstand when Zhang Xiaohua released all of his vitality? Just as Zhang Xiaohua was still in the transportation formation, the transportation formation was first triggered by the huge amount of vitality, and the destination was completely messed up. The distance of the transportation formation was far greater than expected, and then because of the collapse of the transportation formation, Zhang Xiaohua was squeezed into the spatial crack by the power of space. Together with Zhang Xiaohua was a yellow little mink and a black little dog. These two little things also had their eyes tightly shut, and did not move at all. These two little things were little yellow and little black. Although their flesh and blood were not as mutated as Zhang Xiaohua's, they were still safe and sound within the light shield. Zhang Xiaohua's right hand was still tightly clutching a stone that looked like a longsword. It seemed to be a sword embryo. This sword embryo looked very inconspicuous, but the tip of the sword was hanging straight down, and even in the void, it was still very heavy. The light shield came out of nowhere. It was faint but extremely tough, and covered Zhang Xiaohua's body. The crack created by the spatial crack rapidly shrank, and once it came into contact with the light shield, it could not shrink any further. Then with a bounce it expanded outwards again, and disappeared into the distance without a trace. Under the light shield, Zhang Xiaohua's slender body floated slowly in the void, without end. It wasn't as if there wasn't anything in the void. The void was filled with chaotic aura. Although the light shield around Zhang Xiaohua's body kept the spatial cracks outside, it didn't stop the chaotic aura from entering. Strands of chaotic aura seeped into his body, seeping into his meridians, seeping into his bones. Even at the back of his head, there was a mysterious place that actually produced a powerful suction force that sucked in the chaotic aura. Speaking of which, it was strange. The chaotic aura was the origin of all vitality and spiritual energy. If an ordinary person absorbed a strand of chaotic aura, it would be like an ordinary person eating poison. They would either die or explode to death. But Zhang Xiaohua's body actually consciously absorbed the chaotic aura. On Zhang Xiaohua's bones, there were a total of 13,200 tiny dots. His flesh and blood were formed by these 13,200 tiny dots. These 13200 tiny dots, and his flesh and blood originally had some indescribable abnormalities. But after absorbing the chaotic aura, these abnormalities gradually disappeared, and his flesh and blood were no different from that of an ordinary person's. Looking at the bones covered by the 13,200 tiny dots, ordinary people would see them as gray. Even those who cultivated their bodies would see them as a crystalline white. But this person's bones, on those crystalline jade-like bones, were covered in red fine lines. There were so many fine lines that they actually took up 60% of the entire bone. Furthermore, as the amount of chaotic qi absorbed increased, the number of red lines also increased. The strangest thing was that the sparkling and translucent jade-like bones, as well as the crimson lines, were slowly covered by a layer of gray after the number of lines stopped increasing. In the end, the bones were no different from the bones of an ordinary person. Looking at Zhang Xiaohua's blood vessels, there were actually traces of gold. Although the gold was very little, it was definitely there, and it spread throughout his body along with the bright red blood. Even this strange golden color, after absorbing the chaotic aura, slowly lost its original appearance and gradually turned red, blending into the surrounding blood. Also, in Zhang Xiaohua's Naiwan Palace, there was a round dot that was much smaller than a bean. There was a layer of golden light that was actually also absorbing the chaotic aura. Gradually, the golden light also dimmed and finally disappeared. The chaotic aura was indeed the origin of all vital energy. Everything that came into contact with this chaotic aura would become normal. The chaotic aura actually changed all the abnormalities on Zhang Xiaohua's body, and he became exactly the same as an ordinary person. The chaotic aura was not only nourishing Zhang Xiaohua, but also seeping into the bodies of the little black dog and the little yellow mink who were quietly floating beside him. Even the sword embryo had chaotic aura seeping into it. As the saying goes, years don't count in the chaos. No one knew how long this person had been in the void. Maybe it was a snap of a finger, maybe it was a moment, maybe it was 2 hours, maybe it was a year, maybe it was 100 years. In any case, Zhang Xiaohua continued to absorb the chaotic aura, and his appearance never changed. The only thing that changed was the light shield that protected him. As more and more spatial cracks appeared in the void, countless cracks struck the faint light shield, and the light shield became dimmer and dimmer. The light shield also gradually shrank, as if it was about to wrap him tightly. See, another spatial crack struck the light shield, and the light shield blocked it firmly without any damage. But at this moment, in front of the light shield, a spatial crack that had appeared at some point in time started to shrink. Suddenly, it went berserk, sucking in everything around it, including the light shield and Zhang Xiaohua who was inside it. Then it shrunk rapidly and disappeared without a trace. The entire void was still calm. The light shield and this person were sucked into the rapidly shrinking dot, but they were brought to another void. This void was different from the violent void. This void was extremely quiet, and there were no spatial cracks. There was also the existence of any other space. This was the beginning or end of all space. This was an absolute space. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.